I'd like to call this public board meeting to order and welcome all of the public here to this last formal meeting of 2016. I'd also first like to acknowledge that TransLink operates throughout the traditional territories of the Lower Mainland Coast Salish peoples, and specifically that this meeting is being held in the traditional territory of the Kakite First Nation. As most of you here know, on November 23rd, we had a meeting with the Mayor's Council at which the first phase of the investment plan was approved. And we're looking forward to rolling out service under that plan very promptly. So that's a very important step for TransLink and just one of a series of steps that we're hoping will come about going forward. And TransLink, as you also would appreciate, is doing everything they can to deal with the weather issues that we've had in the past few days and we expect in the next few days. So a lot of work to be done. During the meeting, Kevin, in part of his CEO report, will recognize a number of things that have been achieved over the past year. But it's suffice it to say it's been a very busy year with a lot of things that have gone well, and obviously a lot of challenges that TransLink has to deal with. So we'll get to the business of the meeting and start, please, with a motion to approve the agenda. So moved, seconded. Any discussion on the agenda? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. We will also deal with minutes from several meetings since the last time we approved minutes, and I'd like a motion to approve the minutes that are over. Second. And we can do these all as one, can we? Okay. Any discussion on any of the minutes that are up for approval? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. We will now ask the public delegations to speak in order, and I'm going to read a list of individuals who I understand will be here and have applied to speak to us today, just so that you know the order. And if someone isn't here who's on the list, I'll check back again just in case anyone shows up a little later. But on my list I have first Denise Brooks, and then Beth McKellar, Albert Molinius, Norman Oldham, and Roseanne Shannon. Are there any here who would like to speak who are not on my list? And is Denise here? We'll start with Denise. Denise, are you ready to go? And well, welcome. Would you like to come up and when you arrive here, if you can find the button to talk, that'll light your microphone up. There you go. Welcome.
Good morning. I understand I have 5 minutes. I tend to be a talker, so I'm going to set my timer. There we go. First of all, I wanted to congratulate everybody on the Evergreen. It's a huge accomplishment. I think it's an incredible advance into what we need to do for the 21st century to make Vancouver the green city we want it to be. I'm a huge transit geek. I plan to have an outing to every station on the expansion. It was disappointing to see how often that expansion, this really impressive accomplishment was framed in the news as, well, finally, sort of thing. It seems as though negative framing for transit is a habit. It worries me, and I'm living car-free in Vancouver, and I am using transit every day, and I think it is world-class transit. I've lived in Japan and Israel and Mexico. I've lived around. And so I'm really enjoying living in Vancouver. So, but what I'm concerned about and what's bringing me here today is an issue that I didn't expect to be talking about. My background is I'm a computational biologist with BC Cancer. My expertise is in genomics, but what I'm here to talk about today is noise. This summer there was a noise complaint from Falls Creek about transit noise, and in addition, I was attending at that time community meetings for the Joyce Collingwood rezoning. How am I doing? And I saw the plan, and I, of course, being a geek, I went and read the plan. And the plan actually didn't really include any, it included a section about livability and about noise. And one of the things they mentioned was that the city was thinking of adopting the World Health Organization standards for noise pollution. And so I read those, geek, and it seemed as though the noise that we were experiencing in Joyce Collingwood, especially, I mean, I live there. I live right at a very noisy feature on the guideway. Definitely was exceeding those standards. So, and it seemed like Falls Creek was making similar complaints. So I began to ask about it. I asked the city, and I talked to the council, and I talked to city planning, and it seems as though we don't have a sort of a proactive noise monitoring system in place yet for TransLink. This has started to be put in place already for the port, for the airport, but we haven't implemented it yet. It's my understanding at this point in time. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know how you want to look at it, in addition to the World Health Organization publishing their standards, they've also published several scientific papers directly linking noise pollution to cancer, heart disease, and disabilities in children, delayed development in children. And this is, when I read that, of course I read the papers. And so when I read that, I said, this is what totally motivated me to go to council and begin to speak about this, because this is known. This is published. It's not something we can pretend doesn't exist anymore. And if something that we have to get out in front of as soon as possible. And I work with big data every day. I work with genomic sequencing for cancer patients. And I've been doing big data for 30 years. So the amount of data that we would need to collect, and that we could collect easily, transparently, and quickly with a low cost across the entire TransLink, every train, every car, I did the math, every centimeter of track, we could sample that for vibration and still have less data to analyze than what we have to do for one cancer patient's genome. I think that phone over there probably collecting more data than that just on this talk. So it's not a big deal. It seems like a big deal. It seems like a lot of data. But we have really come a long way in handling data. We can take vibration data over time, project very easily. I was doing this in 1980, project through regression, how long it will be given the rate of change of the increase of noise of a particular car or a particular feature, when it will exceed our standards and when we might need to schedule proactively a grinding or a replacement or a tuning, and I'm done. I knew I'd do this, so this is doable. I know how to do it, other people know how to do it. I hope we get in front of this as soon as possible, and I wanted to drive this forward. Thank you.
You should rely on our clock. We've got another 50 seconds for you.
Well, I will take questions.
Yeah, thank you. Larry, did you have a comment or question, or are we?
No, I did want to say, though, that I know that TransLink at a technical level is really very seriously trying to address this, because we face this down in Falls Creek as well, and it's not the first time we've heard it. But what I appreciate, and I'd appreciate a comment from our CEO about, is the idea of a very systematic noise monitoring program. And is that in the cards as well?
Well, I'd need to consult with the folks from the rail company, but we do take this very seriously. We are upping our approach to more systematic rail grinding, as well as doing the truing up the wheels. So it's both the rail and the wheels that help to create the squealing and the noise. So we take it very seriously. One of the delegations that came in a recent board meeting, the president of BCRTC went out and met with them in their home and wanted to understand what the noise issues are. So we take it very seriously. Mr. Richard Sykes was over there. Raise your hand, Richard. Be happy to chat with you after the public delegation session and tell you what's going on. And I think we should take into consideration your proposal for more systematic noise monitoring. We do run a rapid transit system, and it is steel on steel.
Oh, yes.
And as we renew our fleet over the years, I'm hoping that particularly the oldest cars, the Mark Is, can be replaced with cars that are somewhat more quiet. So I think there are a variety of different strategies that we can employ to minimize some of the noise on the SkyTrain system.
I did want to make a follow-up comment if I could, Mr. Chair. You know, when we invite people to come and live at higher density, and particularly when we invite them to come and live around transit stations, we also take on a responsibility, I think, that we really do have to deal with these kinds of issues. So I'm really glad to hear that TransLink is taking this much more seriously and is much more systematic about it.
And I think when Richard's up for his presentation in a few minutes, I think he was going to cover this a little bit. And if you have more questions for Richard on a technical side, Richard would be happy to answer those as well.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, Barry.
I just comment though as well, though it is more broad based than that. You pointed out in your paper that the density around stations didn't exist when the SkyTrain line was built. So it raises the question of what else can be done to mitigate that, perhaps in the way buildings are constructed, which is outside our scope, but nonetheless an important aspect of how one could potentially mitigate the sound.
The city, yes, definitely has that in their Joyce Collingwood plan. However, as you point out, we have a child's play area, a block south of this very noisy switch. There is no noise remediation along that track at all on that side. On the other side where the single-family houses are, there is. And I wonder whether or not there's a process for updating just even basic, noise remediation panels. This isn't the only place in the world that has steel-on-steel transit. And so there are, methods to remediate the local noise when it exceeds standards, right? In addition to, preventing it. So I'm hoping that there's going to be more of that put in place as zoning changes. I'm going to ask the city to make sure that that's a thing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And please take advantage of talking to Richard
Will do.
in the break or when you can. Thank you.
I hit the button.
Thank you as well for your nice comments about Evergreen. It was very exciting, and I'm glad you've had a chance to ride the system. Yeah. Okay.
Now, Beth McKellar is next on the list, but I haven't seen Beth this morning, and I understand. Bob? Yeah. We'll acknowledge her when she gets here and ask her to speak then. So we'll go down the list. And is Albert Millennius here? Behind. Welcome, Albert. You're welcome to use either of those two microphones and just push the button to turn it on.
Does red mean on? Okay, can you hear me? Okay, first things first. I did not forget to shave this morning. I am trying to grow a beard, so I apologize for the in-between look. This isn't a protest, it's a fashion statement. Okay, I've given you both positive and negative advice. I hope you view most of it as positive. I want to give one more very large piece of advice today. At one time, Vancouver was named as the most accessible city in the world, years before it hosted the Vancouver 2010 Olympics and Paralympic Winter Games. That's at hellobc.com. However, when I Googled that same phrase recently, on most of the sites dedicated to accessibility, Vancouver did not even come up. So my advice is that the mayors and the TransLink board both should commit to going beyond most accessible and commit to completely accessible, starting with transit. Universal accessibility has to start somewhere. It might as well be here. Second, in support of this idea, I remind you that in the 1970s, Mayor Art Phillips of Vancouver committed to putting curb cuts in every sidewalk. It took 20 years, but virtually every sidewalk in the city of Vancouver has a ramp, a wheelchair ramp. It was a good start. My third point, many of the original ramps were of a design that was not good for some, so many of them needed to be redone. You need 2 ramps leading into the crosswalks and a raised corner so that the blind do not walk into the middle of the intersection. Consultation with the passengers could have installed the right ramps the first time. Fourth, if other forms of transit are made truly accessible, people with good power wheelchairs will wheel to them and use them in place of handy-dart. If the regular transit becomes more accessible, I can devote more of my time to high assistance passengers. Handy-dart and all other forms of custom transit need stability and improvement, and above all, empowered users' input. Something occurred to me while I was sitting here, and I wrote it down. A slogan like "Access for All" is a good phrase for an election campaign, or for a resume, or for an autobiography. So I hope that this entire region could commit to becoming, in phases, a completely accessible city. And I rewrote some of this at the very last minute, so I'll amend it and forward it to the secretary. Thank you.
Thank you, Albert. And before you leave, I'd also like to thank you for speaking in support of the investment plan. You're very constructive.
Well, I was glad that it went through. I was really disappointed by the referendum or plebiscite, but I think most of the damage has been repaired now.
Thanks very much. Norman Oldham. I will call Norman's name again in a few minutes. Roseanne Shannon. Okay, and Bob, you're not speaking on her behalf, or no? Okay, thank you. Unless you want to hear me. Well, we always like to hear you. But Roseanne will have another opportunity. And I haven't seen Beth, so that's the end of the list of delegations who applied to speak today. We'll pause and just sit for a minute. We could move on to a business portion of the meeting and do our consent agenda items, if there are any. You know, what I think we'll do is go into, first of all, there are consent agenda items for the board. What I'm thinking and not saying clearly is that we'll pause after we've gone through a couple of agenda items, and if Beth shows up, we'll give Beth the opportunity to speak. And so we'll go on with the agenda, and I'll just keep my eyes open for Beth being here. The next item is, well, the consent agenda is done. So on to the CEO report. And Kevin, just before you speak, I'd just like to briefly acknowledge the board feels that we have excellent people in our management group, but occasionally they get acknowledged outside the boardroom and outside their fellow members of management. And recently, Kathy McClay, who disappeared at the wrong time. Did anyone see her around there or not? Yeah. Timing's everything. Well, I might have to say this again too, but Kathy McClay, who is our Chief Financial Officer, was named recently one of the 100 most powerful women in Canada. And we would like to acknowledge that, and if she comes back, I'll acknowledge her again. She will come back. So, Kevin, over to you for your report.
Thank you, Don. And I'd also like to acknowledge your service to the board, as this will be your last formal board meeting as chair and as a board member, as your term expires at the end of the year. But we at TransLink staff have really appreciated your service over these last, 6 years. And my coming on the board as my chair first time around. And then we'll be, of course, welcoming Lorraine Cunningham at the beginning of next year as our new chair. But thank you, Don, as well. Okay. All right, so I think, yeah, you're going to...
Well, thanks, Kevin, and things aren't going exactly according to plan because I see Beth is here and Kathy's back. And Kathy, we acknowledged your being acknowledged as one of the 100 most powerful women in Canada, and you weren't there to hear it, so... Now we're going to take a little pause, and Kevin's been taken out of the agenda for the minute, and when Beth is ready to come and speak to us, we'll welcome Beth up to the front as well. Beth, take your time and...
I plan to, thank you. It's been a hairy ride getting here. Those roads out there, whee! Especially the side roads. But I must admit, New West, woo, no problem. And I would really like to thank my handy dart drivers this week. They have been rock stars in being able to get us where we need to go safely. The taxi drivers, on the other hand, anyways, good morning everybody, and thank you, and I know we made it just under the wire. Deep breath. And I promise I'm not going to yell and scream today, or wag my finger. At the November 10th Joint TransLink Board Mayor's Council meeting, HRA members made some very supportive comments to the Mayor's Council regarding handy dart service in their Phase 1 plan. Today I'm going to be more critical, but I want to be clear that it is politicians Minister Fassbender, Minister Stone, and Premier Clark who are primarily responsible for the situation we face today. I believe that most TransLink staff, executives, and board members are ready to be part of the solution if they are allowed to do so. I'm going to start with the history that leads up to our present situation. In 2008, the provincial Liberals unveiled a grandiose pre-election transit plan. It had something for everyone and a price tag of $14 billion. The provincial Liberals were re-elected in 2009, and they immediately reneged on their transit promises and started cutting back on transit service, including our beloved handy dart. The growing population of seniors means the number of people with disabilities is increasing twice as fast as the rest of the population, and the handy dart service levels per capita have been declining ever since the 2009 election. You can imagine that this history creates some issues of trust at the political level that will not be resolved overnight. Transit riders can't even be sure who is making the decisions that affect our lives and our human rights. In March 2015, Francis Beulah wrote in the Globe and Mail that according to numerous politicians and TransLink employees, the agency's executives and staff are on the phone to the Transportation Ministry in Victoria several times a week getting clearance for everything from news releases to equipment. This kind of political micromanagement is obviously dysfunctional and must be very frustrating for both TransLink staff and the board members. We appreciate the positive steps taken since Kevin Desmond became CEO, but we won't just wait and trust the process, because the process is still broken and the problems are too urgent to wait. We also know that some of the problems can only be fixed at the level of the provincial cabinet, and speaking to the TransLink board is one way to reach Minister Fassbender. Taxis. We have outlined the serious problems with taxis in the past, and some very very limited improvements have been made, but only a few taxi companies, not all of them. We were assured that 800,000 plus was going to increase Handy Dart service and that 90% of this would go to Handy Dart buses. We want to see the numbers and be sure that this is actually happening. Only Handy Dart buses driven by trained and dedicated professionals provide the kind of service many Handy Dart riders need. We have told you before about the lack of accountability and transparency with the contractor that runs Handy Dart, and how multinational corporations never provide good transit service to people with disabilities. This has not changed. It is a very good thing there is a process in place to look at bringing Handy Dart in-house. However, too many people who do not use Handy Dart regularly are involved in making the decisions. We hope that this process will result in a positive outcome, but the choice of a multinational corporation as the consultant to do the public sector comparator is definitely not a good sign. We have not been lulled into complacency. We are staying active and involved. We want to work with TransLink to improve Handy Dart. As we expressed a year ago minus a day, and continue to express, nothing about us without us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Beth, and thanks very much for your support of the investment plan.
Oh, golly. To me, it's good. However, hands are tied. And until those hands get untied and attitudes get readjusted, we can't move forward, any of us. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad you made it.
I am too.
Okay, we will continue now and oh, thank you for letting me know. I was going to call his name, but I didn't see anyone come in.
And if I may, Roseanne Shannon has abstained because she has the pressing of the matters.
Thank you.
Hiding in the weeds.
Well, glad you're here.
I came it back.
No.
First of all, it's a real pleasure to be here this morning. My name is Pastor Norman Oldham. I'm on the Handy Dart Riders Alliance Board of Directors, and I sit on 3 other boards as well. I have some recommendations for you. One, my first recommendation is that TransLink give free transportation on July 1st, 2017, as it's Canada's 150th birthday, and hook up with the food bank to help them out with free food. There are a couple other communities that are doing this, and so I'd like to see that, happen as a recommendation, for the one day. I think it would be great, and also some increased services to get people to the celebrations. So I will leave that with you. Okay, regarding Handy Dart, Beth has brought up some interesting points, but I have a couple of questions. As regarding Handy Dart, as the chairman of the board of TransLink, Have you ridden on a handy dart to see what goes on? And has the rest of the board of directors ridden on a handy dart as well as what goes on? And then the next thing is being that we have extreme weather, why did they put chains on the handy darts? The policy is they have 6 handy darts with snow tires and 2 handy dart drivers on them. And so the other concern that I have is you have set up an advisory council on handy dart, but you don't have any people on the front lines in the trenches. Drivers, call takers, clients, those who are caregivers. I would like to see them on the board of your advisory board, because they're the ones that are really dealing with the issues. And that is my concern. Also, my other concern is I have been here on December the 9th last year. I missed March 30th because I was sick, but I was here June the 23rd in Carnito. And I haven't seen Peter Fassbender here, who's the Minister of TransLink. We have the chair and the board here, but why can't he be here? And I mean, I think that's a legit situation. And so, like I say, I would like to see, I believe my real desire is the fact that we could have one of the best services, that they would come to us and say, well, how come you guys tick? How come this is happening so well? And we would be able to share with them, I mean, have them come from other countries, say, how come this handy dart service is doing well? I'm in favor, the drivers are excellent. We had an excellent driver bring us over this morning, and the drivers are really good. The problem with the cabs, one of the concerns I have with the cabs is their price gouging. One example, a few months ago, Handy Dart sent me a cab to go down to my doctor's. I live at Nelson and Newton in Burnaby. My doctor's down at 1160 Burrard. The bill was over $40, and I made a comment to the driver. He looked at me, and his remark was, well, what the hell is your problem? You're not paying for it. The government is. And I looked at him, I said, you know, you're absolutely right. The government's paying for it. And who do you think's paying the government but me, the taxpayer? And I didn't get any more out of them. And I mean, I've had others where I've got in a cab. I just shared this with one driver because he made some comments. And I said, well, here's an example. Last year, September 13th, I'd gone to BC Housing on a housing meeting, and they sent me a cab from Handy Dart to take me home. I got in, the meter was at $5. The meter starts at $3.20, and it was $5.86 when I got home. And they're ripping you guys off. These things need to be checked out. But I come with a positive attitude. You are doing what you can, but we like to see things a little better, really increased. And the thing is, you have the quality and you have the expertise. And then the last thing that I want to share, and I've gone out on a limb on this, and so I'm almost finished. The lady's name is Miss, and it's Catalina, and her last name is Aguilar, and she is with the United Nations. So, greetings. I am a member of the Board of Directors of Handy Dart Riders Alliance. Handy Dart provides transportation for disabled people in Vancouver, BC, and the Lower Mainland area. The problem is that Handy Dart has had cut back the service and given it to taxi companies. They do not provide the service that Handy Dart drivers do. Our group has gone to the TransLink and has appeared before their board of directors twice, and nothing has been resolved. I'm wondering if you are able to attend, or you have any local contacts in Canada that we could talk to and help us resolve these issues. Regards issues. Reply request, yours truly, Pastor Norman Oldham. And she is the head of the United Nations Disability Committee. And so I resent the letter to them. I haven't got a reply. But like I say, I want to see the best out of you. I'm not here to knock, but I want to see an increase. You guys have the quality, and like I say, I've asked 2 questions, whether you guys have honestly gone on and looked, those yellow and blue buses that run around the city, or pardon me, drive around the city, picking up the Handy Dart people, because it's important. Going on the front lines is very important, and so those are what I want to share. And like I say, I do have the highest regard and respect. I'm not here to knock, I'm not here to condemn, but I want to see an improvement. And I leave it at that, and I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and I also appreciate your support. I know you've been here at most of our public meetings over the last year, and it's very helpful getting us to approval of an investment plan, so thank you. You raised a couple of questions, and I'm going to, in just a second, ask Kevin if there's any response or if someone will speak to you privately. But one of the things you mentioned is Minister Fassbender not being here. And what I'd like to say about that is that Minister Fassbender has advised us regularly that he is available to attend our board meetings, and he has attended a couple of board meetings since he's been appointed minister responsible for TransLink. So you should understand that there's no lack of willingness on his part. He's not here today, but I think he's going to be at one of our early 2017 meetings.
Okay.
So thank you for your comments. And Kevin, is there anything you'd like to?
Yeah, yes, just a couple of things, and thank you for the suggestion about Canada Day, and I'm sure we'll take that in the spirit that it was given, and that's July, so we have a little time.
Prince George is doing it, and I believe
Sure.
Kelowna is doing it, where they're giving free service for the day, with the catch, if you can give something to the food bank, they would appreciate it.
Well, I'll look into what we're beginning to think. I don't know if we've given a lot of thought to all the prep for the events next summer, but I'm sure that TransLink will be very proud to participate in the nationwide and the regional events. As it relates to where we're at with Handy Dart, we did add a lot of Handy Dart service in the latter portion of the year. Hayden Exton, the president of the bus company, indicated to me, I think around August, that we were continuing to see a very strong demand for service, and unless we increase the budget in 2016, we would not be able to meet all the demand and trips. So we approved that, and I believe we added something like 43,000 trips. I'm looking at Louise, and she can confirm with you offline as a result of that. And that was done in large part, well, one, because I feel very strongly that we do need to meet the demand as best that we can, and number two, we were very optimistic that the mayors and the board would pass the investment plan. So a very, very important part of the investment plan that was approved by both bodies 2 weeks ago is a very, very significant increase in Handy Dart service beginning immediately. And it's, I think, over a 2-year period, about a 15% increase in service, much of that front-loaded, unlike some of the other services. The advisory committee, I think we've had 5 meetings so far. They're digging in. There's a lot of work that the committee needs to do, but we will be doing a more broad public engagement and user engagement in January, which I'll be talking about in my CEO report in just a few minutes. So we very much know and want to reach out to users and operators of the system to talk about some of the recommendations that are emerging. The bottom line is we very much want to have excellent service, and we hear all of you and all the feedback and comments that we get. The balance between Handy Dart and supplemental taxi service is part of that conversation. My sense, my point of view is taxis are always going to need to be part of the supplemental service, and I know some of our customers actually prefer and like the taxi service. As it relates to regulating their meters and their how they charge fares, that's good feedback. I think that's something we can talk to the taxi cab associations and the regulators here in the region.
I've got after, I will say this, I'm not making a big deal out of it, but I have gone after many of the cab drivers because I've got in and the meter starts at $3.20 and it's $4, $4.50. One example, 3 years ago I went to Kathy Corrigan's party, a Christmas party. She's about 2 blocks from where I live, just this side of Royal Oak on Kingsway. He brought me home. The fare was $7.80. I have gone, and then he says to me, "Oh, that's nothing. I can leave the meter on until you're inside." I said, "That's news to me." I've gone from my place over to Coast Capital Savings at Metrotown by a cab, compliments a Handy Dart, for $4.30 and $4.50 and maybe $5 at the most. And he's charging $7.80 as an example for 2 blocks. And to me, that's a ripoff. You know, I'm just using that as an example.
Well, if Louise can talk to you offline
Yeah.
and get some more of the information, and I will talk to Louise as well about
Yeah.
how we handle any complaints about impropriety with taxi cab companies or drivers. So I will look into that
One last
personally
thing,
as well.
when I have complained and I ask to get anything, oh no, we can't give it to you, that's classified. I never get an answer out of Handy Dart whether they've done anything or they haven't done it, and I don't know how that can be resolved. But again, there is an improvement, and I do appreciate everything. And I'm just thanking you guys to do further improvement. That would be great. Thank you.
Thanks again. Well, thank you very much to all the people who have come and spoken to us this morning. We appreciate the constructive input, and it is very helpful to us. Kevin, back to your CEO report.
Thank you, Don. As I was saying, this is your last board meeting, and in part, this is the last board meeting of the year. So I do want to take the opportunity to spend a few minutes reflecting on some of the major things that and topics and issues that TransLink's dealt with throughout the year. But first, weather is on everybody's mind. You've heard a couple comments about fine Handy Dart drivers getting through the difficult icy and snow conditions. Of course, we had the storm on Monday, and we're gearing up for possible snow tonight and throughout tomorrow. I would expect, based on the last forecast I've seen, that tomorrow is going to be an awfully sloppy day for commuters and motorists and people just trying to get around. So I've reviewed with both the rail and bus companies their adverse weather plans, and I've reviewed the public communications planning that we do here at TransLink, as well as the lead for our customer information that handles all the customer information through Hayden's group at excuse me, at CNBC. Safety, of course, is our first priority going forward, but we do try to keep the system as operational as possible given the conditions of the right-of-way, whether it's the rail right-of-way, which Richard can speak to a little bit as well, the preparation that BCRTC takes to make sure that SkyTrain can continue operations, and on the bus side. On the bus side, of course, we're only as good as the streets that we operate on, and I'm heartened that CNBC has good working relationships with all of the jurisdictions to make sure that they prioritize de-icing and snow plowing on the streets that the major bus routes operate on. That said, even on Monday, there were some streets that were impassable. We had to reroute buses, and we'll see how it goes tomorrow with the intensity of the storm. We did a press availability yesterday, middle of the day, out at the Rail OMC. Both CNBC and Rail were there to talk about some of the preparations that we take operationally to prepare the rails and prepare the overhead trolley wires to de-ice and so forth. So we are as prepared as we can be, and we want to reinforce with our customers, know before you go. Check in on our website, sign up for alerts, go on our Twitter feed. We've got lots of social media and other electronic media that can give you up-to-date status of the system going forward. So before you travel tomorrow morning, check in and check on the status of the system. If it is a significant snow event, it will affect bus service for sure, and it may create some delays on SkyTrain going forward. But please do go to our website. You can find lots of good information on how to know before you go and prepare for the event. I also want to just mention, and Richard will talk about this a little bit more in his report, we've had over the last 3 weeks some unusual delays for our West Coast Express customers, and we're very apologetic for those delays. We're very frustrated by those delays. We are working closely with the Canadian Pacific Railroad to address the issues. Most of those issues, unfortunately, have been the result of freight train interference. This morning we had another delay. That was a frozen switch. So those are the types of issues that we are contending with. But I just want our West Coast Express customers to know that we are paying attention on a daily basis and doing our best to get that service back up to snuff. And Richard will talk about that a little bit more. As was mentioned by one of the public delegations, last Friday was a really, really big day for the region, a really big day for the province, a really big day, of course, for TransLink, and thanks to Don and Lorraine representing the board at the Evergreen opening event on Friday. We're super excited. I think the system, it looks beautiful, and for all the people that showed up for the event on a pretty crummy day, it was pretty wet, kind of cold. It was really nice to see all the people lining up in the rain, waiting to be one of the first to tap on the system. Vivian and I were standing when the gate opened up, and the smiles on people's faces was really, really fun to see. I rode around and visited with a lot of the customers back and forth on the extension, and there was a lot of excitement. We're monitoring the ridership. Don't have a big report on it yet, other than an interesting factoid. Based on Compass data, we know that something like 45,000 individuals have ridden the system between Friday and Tuesday. And to put that number into context, that's more than the combined population of Port Moody and more in Belcarra. So a lot of people are trying the system out. What we're seeing so far, obviously very early, is the ridership at each of the stations is roughly comparable to the Millennium Line, most of the Millennium Line stations as well. But it was a great day. A great opening, and I'm utterly convinced that over time it's going to be a big success. Coming up on December 19th, in 11 days, is the last piece of the Evergreen extension puzzle when we do the major bus service changes, which will improve our customers' ability to get to and from the different stations on the Evergreen extension. 22 routes will be affected in the Tri-Cities. Angela Otto, our manager of marketing, will be here in a little while to give you an update on the marketing communications that we're doing associated with that. But that's really the last big piece that we need to put in place for the Evergreen extension. As Don mentioned, November 23rd, Mark that day, was, I think, a historic day for the region, with the unanimous approval of the investment plan that's really, I think, 3 years or more in the making from the Mayor's Council and TransLink. It really is, it gets us started. It continues the momentum on improving service and getting the necessary increases to an overloaded system now, and continuing the work on the various capital projects. We are poised to initiate the first of the service improvements on January 16th. Just a couple of months, as it turns out, less than 2 months after approval, and in fact before we even start collecting any of the new fees from the fare increase and the property tax change. On January 16th, we'll be adding C-Bus service. We'll be putting additional service on Expo Millennium lines in the off-peak and shoulders of the peak period, and additional peak service on Canada Line, and as I said, we'll be starting additional Handy Dart service right at the beginning of the year. We expect to have some good publicity around those service improvements in January, and then on the heels of that, starting in April, will be the first of successive rounds of bus service increases on CNBC, so more to come on that. And of course, a lot of work now and a lot of attention is moving to phase 2. That's really the next big mountain that we have to climb to get the rest of the funding from the federal government, the province, and from the region in order to continue progress on the major capital projects, particularly the 2 rail projects. Today you'll be hearing from Kathy McClay and Chris Dacre on our budget. That budget incorporates all the investment plan pieces as well. So it continues progress on our 3 main priorities: obviously implementing the Mayor's plan, maintaining state of good repair in the system, and customer service and ridership. So I'm very excited to bring that before you today as well. I do want to announce, yesterday we put out a media release that you might have seen, and again, very good work from Kathy McClay and her finance team, to successfully conclude our 9th bond issuance for TransLink, bringing in about $150 million in new financing, very important financing for our capital projects. We are the only transportation agency in this country, actually, that goes to market independently and issues bonds. And since 2010, it's my understanding that we've raised about $1.3 billion in financing through the bond market. And when we did the solicitation for the bonds last week, the initial order book was in excess of $370 million from 27 institutional investors. And I think the key point there is that confidence that they've got in TransLink and our very, very strong finances. So I think over the years, hats off to the finance group and this board, frankly, and your oversight to put us in a position where the bond market has that kind of confidence in this organization, as indicated by the demand for our debt. So hats off to the group, but it's very important for this organization to continue progress on its very important capital program. I'd like to also mention stakeholder engagement. We talk about that a lot, particularly in the stakeholder engagement committee. We have various different engagements either underway or about to get underway. Most importantly, the 2 rapid transit projects, now that the mayor's plan has been approved, and we have the next round of funding to bring us to procurement. We'll be reinitiating public engagement on both the South to Fraser rapid transit projects and the Millennium Line Broadway extension. This month we'll be doing stakeholder engagement, and next month we'll be doing public meetings in both Surrey and Vancouver, and beginning to further brief the public and get public feedback on both of those projects. So I think that's good momentum, very important to get that feedback, and it will be very interesting to see how the public and potential future transit customers absorb that. We will be continuing the next round of our Southwest Area Transport Plan underway soon at the beginning of next year, and our final round of public engagement for the Patello Bridge. I think we have 2 different engagements scheduled for the beginning of the year, and then again in the summer in connection with the BC Environmental Assessment Office to move that forward. Also on the public engagement, I mentioned that before, the Access Transit Review. We've had 5 advisory committee meetings. They're digging in well. I think they've been very open, very candid conversations that were happening. I've been keeping very close track of those conversations. A lot of good issues, good topics have come up at that committee. In addition to the committee, and part of what the committee is absorbing is a policy and peer review. It was mentioned by the pastor. We want to be the best. Well, we do want to know what other transit agencies, particularly in Canada, do with their paratransit handy-dart-like services, to make sure that where we can improve based on what we know from peers, we should be doing that, and where we lead the way, we should acknowledge that as well. The service delivery model is a big element of that. Our plan is to bring back to the board at the March cycle our recommendations to how to manage handy-dart soup to nuts. Right now it is largely fully contracted out to MVT. So the public sector comparator work and the other analysis work is looking at various different models that run the gamut to fully contracting out all the way to bringing everything in-house and everything in between. So still a lot of work to do, but our aim is to make sure that we have the highest service quality possible at the most cost-effective public price, and to maximize ridership and the amount of trips that we can provide. That really is the bottom line. And as I mentioned, we'll be doing direct stakeholder engagement on the emerging recommendations in January. So again, look to March, where we'll be taking recommendations to the board. Finally, I just want to run through very quickly some of the kind of year in review highlights, given this is the last board meeting, and I'd like to kind of put in the context we delivered. First on ridership. Ridership has surged now in the fall. The last time I reported to the board, we were looking at about a 2% ridership growth year to date. Ridership growth is now up to 4% year to date. We will certainly end this year with an all-time high in ridership. And what that means to me and what that means to the organization is the demand for our service is very, very strong. And I think that just further underscores the import of the investment plan being adopted by our combined bodies, the board of directors, and the mayor's plan. So we can't get that service out fast enough, because We put out good service, we put out more abundant service, there are more people that need to use our service. Evergreen Extension is a good start with that, and then the services that we'll be rolling out. We delivered on Compass. We've talked about that a lot here at the board and in our committees. Compass continues to work and work well for the public and for TransLink. We delivered additional fleet on our rail system. All 7 of our 4-car Mark III trains are now fully operational and doing very, very well. If you've been out in the system and been on one of the new train sets, they are absolutely gorgeous. They provide additional customer amenities and additional space. And I look forward to the day that we can cut the ribbon on the next round of additional cars. We really, really need more fleet as fast as we can get there. CNBC, of course, has also been bringing in and renewing its fleet and delivered some 135 additional vehicles throughout both the fixed route bus system and the shuttle, our community shuttles. We delivered a variety of capital projects, most prominently the New West station upgrade. We cut the ribbon along with Minister Fassbender and others just a few weeks ago, and that's a signal of more to come on the projects that are still under construction. Patel Bridge rehabilitation, of course, we brought that in 5 weeks early, and the Hamilton Transit Center for CNBC. And while that's a little bit of sort of inside business for TransLink, the public doesn't see that. I continue to be amazed at the work that CNBC did for the absolutely seamless operational change to move all those additional buses and mechanics and operators without a single blip in operations over the weekend, and then the first rush hour on Monday is a tremendous testament to the great work of CNBC. So that was not just a capital project, there was a lot of operations behind it. At the beginning of next year, I will hope to be pleased to report to this board that we'll be initiating our first Vanpool pilot. I feel very strongly that TransLink should be providing really high quality fixed route rail and bus services, but we also, and handy dart service, but we also need to be looking at alternatives to the fixed route. We can never meet all of the demands in this region, and Vanpool is a way to fill in some of those gaps. We're working with a very prominent company on the North Shore to initiate that Vanpool program in partnership, and I look forward to reporting on that early in the year. We remain on target to launch the pilot in early 2017. So, Mr. Chairman, that is my report.
Well, thanks very much, Kevin. Now let's open that up to any discussion. Marcella?
Buttons, thank you. Kevin, thanks very much for that report. You went through it very, very quickly in speed record time. You got your 5 minutes in. I just want to say to you a huge thank you from me as a member of the board for the work that you have driven in through this organization, and to all of the senior team. Nothing could be done without all of them. It's been an enormous year. So many projects and major projects that this organization and the board have been working on for years have come to fruition this year, have been brought home well, brought home in a very timely way, very positive impact for all of our customers. So without going to any of the specifics, and I know there's so many other things you and your team are working on, I just want to thank you so much for all the work that you and the whole team have done, and all the leaders here. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcella. You know, I would only say this, I learned this in my first job in the transit business. We're an entirely interdependent entity. Nothing that goes on in a transit agency is a result of one person or even one unit's work. We're all in this together. So it's not just the team behind you there, the executive staff, it's the team, whether it's a bus operator, a station attendant in SkyTrain, the people that keep the fleet running every single day. Those are the people that really deserve the praise for the types of services and the projects that are delivered here.
Larry, and then Gregor. Larry.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask a question of Kevin and then make a comment. The question is, earlier there was an allusion to the advisory committee for Access Transit, and you mentioned it as well. Could you just remind us of just how wide the participation is in that committee? I think I, at least as one board member, was quite impressed that you were reaching out to not only advisory groups and other people, but to users as well.
Yes.
In that, and could you just describe what that's about?
Yes, it's, you know, it's always a tough choice. How do you develop an advisory committee? The size of the committee needs to be manageable. The composition needs to represent lots of different interests and perspectives. When we're trying to develop really a fully comprehensive appraisal of what's the best way to operate a very complicated and very expensive service. So the composition includes users of HandyDart. It includes, I believe we have now one operator on the, or person who had driven and operated HandyDart service. It includes a couple of organizations that provide services to people with disabilities, like dialysis treatment. So in many respects, they're our customers too, because they provide the service to the people that we're transporting back and forth, and their scheduling and operational issues really feed into how we can best schedule and operate and handle our customers back and forth going into their services. We have some advocacy organizations involved as well. So we try to get a pretty broad base and diverse spectrum involved in the advisory committee, knowing full well that we should also be reaching out to the users more intensively, and that's what we'll be starting next month in January.
I mean, I've really appreciated that not only is this a very systematic review. It's the second thing is it's a review that is being done with the users. It's not being done by a star chamber or someone, a consultant somewhere. It is being done with the users, and the outreach is going to be very strong and very rich before you come to conclusions. I think it's very important to mention that, because I know a lot of people came to this board a number of times and expressed their problems, but nothing did seem to change. Well, this is a systematic change. And the second part of it is that I've noticed as a board member, as it's being described to us, it's a very open-minded assessment. It doesn't have a predetermined conclusion. Different models are being looked at, precedents are being looked at, and I think that's important. On another completely different topic, we've all been celebrating the approval of the 10-year investment plan, and that's great. But what we haven't really emphasized enough was how that happened over the last few months. There was a lot of public commentary about the Mayor's Council and the board of TransLink maybe not working together as well as they should, etc. But this effort was a complete joint venture. It was a joint venture at every level, at the staff level, at the decision-making level, and I think we should notice that and we should emphasize that. And I think Mayor Robertson and you, Mr. Rose, should be complimented for bringing those groups together. They were not coming together before. They did come together at that meeting. Anyone who watched that public meeting saw both groups on the same wavelength and a unanimous decision across several political parties and various kinds of interests. And I want to commend your leadership for that, because I think it's very important.
Well, Gregor gets to speak next, but I'll say thank you very much for that comment and your observations. Over to you, Gregor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for that, Larry, but it was, I think it was a lot of the members of the board, and in particular work that Lorraine and Don and Barry did over the last couple of years, and lots of mayors as well being very receptive. I think it was a joint effort across the board to get beyond the very difficult governance structure that we have, and just kind of set that aside. We have to deal with that in our basic functions, but I think everyone decided it was time to elevate the work that we do. That's too important to the region to improve the service. So lots of people rose to the challenge, which made it possible to get this first big piece done. And my question is more about the implications and some of the complications as we've discussed, Kevin, on the Evergreen line opening and now increasing ridership coming through, particularly commercial and Broadway, and how a station which is seeing a lot of construction right now, much needed construction and refit, but there already is enormous pressure at that transit node, and with Evergreen line volume added to it. If you could just talk about how we're going to manage that, how we're going to manage the extra volume moving through stations, particularly in Vancouver, where people are, well, there's full trains already coming in, and people are trying to get in the rest of the distance within Vancouver, and some frustration on the platforms because of the incredible volume, which is a great problem to have, but obviously the ways that TransLink can manage that are going to be important until we get additional train cars and volume that we can move people faster.
Thank you, Mayor. The first big change, of course, was October 22nd when we changed the pattern of the Expo and Millennium lines. We then very quickly began to study in the field and using Compass data how ridership trends were adjusting to the pattern change. The good news is, the pattern change at the end of the day really only affected a smaller portion of the ridership. So I think our customers adjusted to the change pretty quickly and pretty easily, frankly. But it did change some of the dynamics at some of the stations. Commercial Broadway's been a pinch point for years. There had been overcrowding and sporadic in the peak of the peak instances of pass-ups where people couldn't get on the first train going forward. And that continued actually after the pattern change. We are, our teams between the planning, Jeff Cross's group, and the rail company will be out monitoring the changes in ridership across the system with the Evergreen opening over the next couple of weeks. So we'll be very hands-on looking at how those patterns emerge, and of course with the bus service changes. In a couple of weeks and over time, probably after holiday season, I think we'll really begin to see how the market is affected. Also, I think people who are coming in from the Tri-Cities on Evergreen probably will begin to think about their own choices about how they get in, whether they stay on the train and try to transfer Commercial Broadway, or in fact get off at Lougheed and then go around on the Expo line and get a seat there. That still means Commercial Broadway is going to be a pinch point. How we respond to that is going to be a tough one. We have not a single spare train on the Expo Millennium line. And that's going to hold us back because whatever we do to try to relieve some of the situation could get us into a bit of a rob Peter to pay Paul, and that is ultimately the peak of the peak pinch point. The construction at the station I think exacerbates that some, and in the beginning of February we may have a little bit more of a disruption because one of the passageways will be reconstructed at that time. So we're looking at that very carefully. So I think we can come back and report on that over time. The reality is we have a really well-used system in Commercial Broadway, and the way the system's been designed creates that pinch point. And we can come back to you, I think, with more of those options once we see how the utilization emerges.
Okay, yeah, it'd be good to keep up with that, just
yes.
And any changes. And is there any way, you say there's no spare trains? Are there no used SkyTrain cars sitting somewhere in?
Unfortunately, they're kind of bespoke, these cars. So yeah, I hope we'll be able to be talking about our next round of procurement for the cars, but we're probably at least 2 years away, really, from getting additional fleet. So we are where we are. We're going to do our best. In the operational plan, by the way, there is, and I'm looking at Jeff or Richard, I think there are 1 or 2 trains that are slotted in the peak of the peak that just more or less operate from Commercial Broadway into downtown. Is it 2 trains, Richard? Yeah, it's 2 trains that are put in. So they don't actually run on the main system. They are specifically there to deal with some of the crowding condition. And are they scheduled in, or are they slotted in actually based on demand? They're slotted in, yeah. So that is one of the tools that we use to relieve some of the pressure on Commercial Broadway.
maybe as a supplemental, just to follow up, Gregor, on your comment, Broadway Commercial is under reconstruction. And are we satisfied that once that reconstruction is completed, which we all know is going to be painful for, frustrating for riders while we're going through it, because we don't like to disrupt them, but we are. Are we satisfied that once that's done, we're going to be able to alleviate some of that congestion?
The congestion of the flow of customers between Expo and Millennium and going up and down the vertical circulation, whether it's to the street or between the rail lines, absolutely, it's going to really improve the situation. One of the adjustments that customers on the Expo line had to make, and we kind of observed this in the early days and we continue to observe it, in the pattern change we created either 6-car Mark I trains or 4-car Mark II, Mark III trains. And part of what we were trying to do is get people to distribute themselves across the platforms for all 6 of those trains or 4 of the more modern trains. Initially, people were still kind of used to where they would stand, more accustomed to maybe a prior 4-car train. As we get people to distribute better, that's helping some, and I think people will continue to learn that. The reconstruction will help the circulation within the station. It doesn't really address, ultimately, Mayor Robertson's point about the capacity of the trains themselves.
Thank you, Don. Just a different, what you mentioned earlier, the West Coast Express, which is obviously a great issue for all the users of West Coast Express. Do you have a sense from Canadian Pacific whether that is mostly weather related or whether it's freight train related?
It's freight train interference.
Okay, and you're working on that? Well,
And we have been in constant contact with the operational people and senior executives at Canadian Pacific to work through and resolve those issues.
thank you.
Thanks very much, Kevin. Gregor, your light's on. Did you want to say anything else? Or?
Actually, I had a question just on bus procurement and electric buses, which, again, we've connected a little bit on, just coming from a big gathering of mayors from big cities around the world and focused on climate change in particular. And there was, I think, the overarching framework in terms of cities taking action on climate change was that 90% of buses within the next decade will be procured as electric battery buses. Pilots are happening all over cities all over the world, and that's now starting to scale, and it looks like there's a very aggressive mood to electrify fleets and in particular buses. And I'm curious if you could give us a brief update in terms of our procurement with all the buses we're going out for with phase 1 procurement, and what we're envisioning in terms of next steps with electric buses.
Thank you, Mayor. The Canadian Urban Transportation Association was here, about a month, 6 weeks ago. And there was a lot of conversation, a lot of buzz, and there was equipment to kick the tires, electric buses. I'm utterly convinced that is the future in one form or another. I've asked my staff through CNBC and the planning folks here to develop a plan going forward on how we could begin to evaluate, test, and then move into deployment electric buses. It is not as easy as simply deciding, say, whether to buy diesel, CNG, or hybrid. And even CNG, of course, once the decision was made to go to CNG, then you had to re-outfit bases for fueling stations, changing your fire life safety systems as well. Similarly, with electric buses, you have to make a decision on the charging technology. There are 2 technologies available. One is a slow charge, which means you put charging facilities at your bases, and that's its own capital project, its own issue with energy, and where exactly you put the charging stations and how you manage the buses in the yard. The other alternative is fast charge, which means you put fast charge stations on city streets and or on CNBC property at bus loops or layover locations. There are pros and cons to both of those technologies. Either technology might work differently. So in an urban area where you have very frequent service, it might lead you to one approach. in a more suburban area, it might lead you to a different approach. If you're running very back and forth, heavily used urban service versus highway or express service. So each of those issues has to be evaluated going forward. But I think we should be moving into that. I would be delighted to know if, and work with the federal government in particular to see through their green fund in the new financing, if they can help accelerate adoption of that, not only for TransLink, but our partner agencies throughout the country. I know that several of the other urban systems in Canada are very, very anxious to get into the electric game. So more to come on that. Not quite as easy as just writing a spec, though. We have to figure out operationally where and how we can make this work.
Thanks, Don. Just, I guess, rolling back to the SkyTrain discussion about capacity, and I think it's important for us to remember the very important program that's underway to refurbish the Mark I cars, and maybe you can share a little bit about that. But we're refurbishing 114 Mark I cars, which are about 30 years old. Maybe a little bit younger in some circumstances, but a majority of the fleet, is that right, Kevin?
You know, Murray, I would really want to defer that to Richard. So if you can hold that question, maybe when Richard gives the BCRTC report, Richard can give you an update on that particular program.
The reason I'm raising it is because from my perspective, it demonstrates a very effective use of resources in maintaining capacity for a 15-year period beyond what the life expectancy of those cars was. And we would be in much more dire circumstances from a capacity perspective had we had to buy replacement cars as opposed to that refurbishment program. And so I guess I'm giving Richard a heads up that he could talk a bit about that when he comes forward.
Thanks, Marie, and I think that's a good time to draw an end to Kevin's report and invite Richard to come up and report on behalf of the train company. Richard Sykes.
That big one.
I want to assure you, Richard knows how to maintain a rail fleet. Whether or not he can push the button on the mic's a different story.
It's a difficult mic, I can tell you.
The one that says talk with a big red light button on it. Mr. Chair, board members all, good morning. So I'll run through my presentation first and then we'll go back to your questions, Murray, as requested. Please, Frank. So, we're pleased to report that the Expo Millennium Lines exceeded or met their targets in Q3 of 2016. Key focus up there on the slide is the West Coast Express number. Our target's 97.8, and we were slightly below during that period. And some of that was due to switches and signals and freight priorities. To alleviate and help our customers and to ensure that they're informed around what we were doing during that period, we've reached out, we went out and met with our customers, and we did 2 seat drops with apologetic notes advising of what was going on and what we were doing. As Kevin's alluded to earlier on, we're working daily with local operations people at CP Rail. We've escalated that through to the General Manager and up to the Vice President now to establish communications around what we can do to ensure that we meet our demands. Our customers have been sympathetic. There's been some comments back from both sides, but at the end of the day, it's all about us being empathetic and understanding their needs and working with CP into delivering the service back to where it belongs. There's been some challenges. Please. Success stories during the quarter. The Mark III integration, as Kevin alluded to earlier on, we have introduced all 7 of the Mark III service into service now. There were some challenges during testing and commissioning. The passengers actually loved them. It's very encouraging to be out on the railway to actually see people waiting for a Mark III train. It doesn't help with the capacity, but it is very, very nice. It's From an engineering perspective, you have to stand and look down the train and see full. It's amazing. If you look at the difference between the Mark 1 and the Mark 3, you know, it's very, very different. It's a very European model to have the open train. Makes a huge difference. People actually smile on those trains, but that's because of the openness. It was nowhere near that. As I say, and anecdotally, you know, those persons are actually waiting for those trains. It's amazing, absolutely great stuff. Our passengers are enjoying their lightness. The windows make a huge difference. Coming from Europe, you know, we have full-length glass doors. It makes a big difference. The space is the same. The seat arrangements are slightly different, as you're all aware, but it's more encouraging. I think we need to do a little bit more as we wander down the path, maybe into the Mark 4s, encourage people into the spaces that we won't stand in. How do we do that? Well, from where I am, at the end of the day, I would look at the gangways, how you put more handrails in there, how you light that, how that allows our customers to want to get into that space. Small things, but we'll get there. Raging success regarding the integration. Great teamwork from myself and Sandy Zane's team. The Evergreen. For me, as one of the newbies in the room, you know, I'm just into my 2.5-year tenure, a collaborative approach between us and TransLink, the bus company, the first responders. Absolutely amazing how receptive everyone was and how we wanted to work together. The first responders have actually sent letters saying thank you for the training, thank you for the integration. The fire chiefs are amazed regarding our training plan and how we allowed them to do what they needed to do, how they came to the depot at Edmonds, we allowed them to jack a train up for practice, and then we let them do it out at Lafarge Lake as well. A huge success from all the parties as far as we're concerned from the rail perspective. It wasn't just a rail, it's a whole service for the community. Success in our first week, the visitors love it. I was out on the line yesterday. There was only 4 people leaving Lafarge Lake. It was about 2:20. A lady come running down because I had my TransLink jacket on. I'm like, oh no. But it wasn't like that at all. She, first time for the last 10 years, doesn't drive. Her mother lived out in Poco, never had no way of getting downtown out there. She was so sympathetic and so joyous that we could finally link the services together. It was amazing from my perspective. We're proud as an organisation, obviously, to operate and maintain the railway and to serve our customers with that new service. We will see it grow from strength to strength. Noise has been a big issue, something that's new to myself as an engineer, but we've created a outreach system. Myself and Vivian have been out to meet a number of our people, okay, and a number of our communities. There is a huge voice in the Quebec area. I go out and meet with Patsy on a regular basis to keep them up to date. There's a commercial Broadway team now that are now on centre. A lady who presented herself today. We will outreach to them. We will speak to these people, and we will ensure that everyone in the community understands why we're here, what we're trying to do to alleviate these issues and address their concerns. Some are singular. Some are as many as 4,000 people, depending on your SATRA group. We have to, you know, we need to be a good neighbour. I think it's absolutely critical. One of the things I'm doing to manage the noise, with a lot of support from Kevin and Vivian and, you know, Kathy's team with regards to funding, we are grinding the railway on a systematic approach. I took it on board when I first arrived in 2014. Throughout 2015, we managed to grind 2/3 of the railway. Through 2016, I actually think it'll be 4/5. And what we're doing is we're grinding the rails between stations. If I can get there this year, if the inclement weather was to leave us alone, we'd be able to grind the stations and the switches. But for 2017, my plan is to grind the whole railway. I'd need to do progressive maintenance to ensure we can keep the noise levels down. We're working with our vehicle team to ensure that the wheels are in a good profile. They help keep the road profile right. And where that metal hits the metal, that's the critical path. What can we do? So we're working through an engineering process to make sure that we can do that. When it comes around to passenger PA announcements, there are another group that say some of the stations are too loud, their messaging is too much, it's too frequent. From an operations perspective, you know, we try to not make announcements before 7 o'clock and not after 8 p.m. Inevitably, if something happens, you know, we will make an announcement, you have to, but we're trying to look at that. One of the things that Sandy and I are actually doing as well is we will undertake a PA study across the whole of the network throughout 2017 to understand where that is. But at the time of the Evergreen Line opening, there were many people in the area, certainly around the low heat area, that were very concerned about the announcements. We have to communicate with our people. We have to take all of our customers' experiences into account. If you're partially sighted, I need to tell you where to go. If you're partially deaf, you need to understand. But I have to be empathetic around those people in the close proximities. Where there is very little traffic early in the morning, the announcements could be overbearing. But we're looking at those. We will have the study done, and then we'll understand where we can benchmark from there onwards. So, the CVMs, ticket vending machines, compass vending machines, at the end of the day, from the data we're gathering now, we're seeing the traffic flows and the crowding issues at VCC and YVR. We knew that at the end of the day, and it was planned with Jeff's team and with Sandy's team and with and we will look at putting in more compass vending machines in those station areas. And as we look across the network and we evaluate the data that comes in, we'll have to look at that in the same way. That concludes my update. I concur. If we hadn't had the foresight to look at the Mark 1s in the time that we did with regarding the refurbishment, yes, we would have been in a very difficult place, in my opinion. It's all about having what I would look at from a maintenance perspective, the 10-year plan, your 20-year outlook vision. With Jeff's team and Sandy's team, we are now putting that together. At BCRTC, we've just recruited somebody who's just going to look after the long sustainability of the fleet. The Mark 3s are here. Okay, in 15 years' time, we may need to replace the floor. In 10 years' time, you may need to do something with the door mechanisms. It's all about having a comprehensive maintenance regime that shows when you need the funding, what the funding's for, is it half-life overhaul, is it three-quarter life refurbishment, and is there an extension into the life of the vehicle needed. Many people around, or many transit operators around the world, from a train perspective, do that. It's about having that long-term vision that shows us when we need our funding.
Thanks, Richard. Jim, you have a comment, question? Murray?
On this topic, can you just remind me, we're spending about 15% of the cost of a new train in the refurbishment process and extending their life about 50% over what was expected originally. Is that about the ratio?
Right, yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to confirm that the cost effectiveness of the program,
Yeah.
very evident.
Mm-hmm.
And 114 Mark I cars out of a fleet of how many, Rich?
That's all of the Mark 1s.
No, but I mean, how many cars do we have in total?
In total, 286 now with the
So-
new Mark 3s.
Plus or minus almost 45% of the cars are a part of this program, so a very important part of our fleet.
Correct.
Okay, thank
Very
you.
much so.
Richard, since the time that you and Vivian have been working together, how do you feel the improvement has been in terms of system recovery time in the event there is a problem? And tied in with that is also public communications when there is an issue with SkyTrain.
I think both Vivian and Kevin came with a very different vision to where we were previously, in my opinion. I think looking at having lessons learned immediately afterwards and understanding what we could have done has allowed that time to come down. Failure is inevitable on an electrical mechanical system, whether it's a bus or a train or any other transport service. What you have to do is evaluate what went wrong, what you can do to improve. Your recovery time's absolutely critical. And from a SkyTrain perspective, I'm not going to get into Aidan's area, it's all about those lessons learned. If we look back at where we were in 2014, an outage was around 8 hours. Inevitably we do whatever we can from a preventive maintenance perspective to make sure that we don't have the failures. But when you do, it's about recovering, looking at what you've done, and cutting those minutes out. Every 30 seconds make a huge difference to our customer. So you have to look at it from that granular level. I think Vivian is only driving at numbers. 2017 for us, it is all about understanding our KPIs and what we deliver and what we can do to improve on that. Fair.
Okay, Jim. Thanks, Richard. And maybe two more. We can talk to Richard privately too, so we try to keep the schedule. Marcella,
I'll be
and then
really
Larry,
fast.
and then Lorraine.
It's actually a similar question. We had an issue years ago with the reset on the manual reset on the SkyTrain system, which was a cause of some of the failures. So on the new Evergreen, is that the same system that we have through the rest of our SkyTrain system, or it's a different reset?
It's a very similar reset. It's being addressed underneath the manual recommendations that we will put across the whole of the network as one entity. What I don't want to do is run two separate systems, Evergreen and Expo Millennium. No worries.
Larry?
Richard, the delegate that was speaking to us today was talking about other things beyond just grinding the rails. I understand that grinding the rails, and I'm glad to hear it's more systematic than it's been in the past, and it is focusing on those areas where there has been expressed problems. But I've also heard about baffles or some other things that you can do in particularly difficult locations to enhance the benefits of grinding the rails. Is that true? And if so, are we doing those things? And then beyond that, are there things that you can do outside the mechanical part of the system? For example, landscape or the way could we have noise barriers at fence barriers and things like that? Are we doing those kind of things as well?
So there are many things we can do to control the noise in the environment that we make. One of the things we have to understand in an ever-growing city in the way that we are, and the condos that are put up in the way they are that tend to be more glass, that resonates noise. How we measure that is my plan for 2017, as I said earlier on, is to go through and measure where we are now, understand what that benchmark is, and then look at what we can do to decrease that noise in our local communities. Barriers are an option, but they come with a cost and implication and a ramification. Have to be able to get onto the railway from a maintenance perspective. What we have to do is look at that from a balancing and saying, is it safe? What are the risks? Most of our viaducts are above very busy highways or streets. I have a grave concern around that. When I was in London, we attached train skirts to below the area, but they become big sails when they become detached. So that comes with its own risk. We have to look at that from an engineering perspective. There are many other things we can do, as you alluded to. Track switches tend to make some noise as well. That's where you get your clickety-clack noises. We are looking at what we need to do with the switches as well as just the rail. At the end of the day, if we can make that a smooth transition, that brings noise down. Long term, there are many things you can do with different rails that are harder than what we have now to look at an environmental perspective. But big implications, big ramifications, and a long-term capital cost. Outside of that, with the train wheels, if we can keep the profiles right, so literally, a bit like some people go out and retread their tyres, you can return a tyre on a train. I'm looking to get the wheel-rail interface down to the optimum. We're working with a number of agencies. It's not something that can happen overnight, but we can look at what the optimum is for our trains. We have 3 different types of trains, all weigh differently. They have different characteristics in age and how they're maintained. And I want to get to a balanced maintenance regime and say, this is best for us. That's the noise level we're going to commit to, and that's the noise that we can sustain.
Okay. I do want everyone to know, by the way, that buildings, at least in the city of Vancouver, which I do know, are built to a high noise abatement standard. So it's not that the surrounding high-density buildings are not being built to a standard, as was alluded to by someone. They are being built to a higher standard. We have that in place, and it's a higher standard than many other parts of the country. So I think the municipality is doing its part. They could do more, perhaps, in a location which has got particularly high noise potential, but they are already doing something, actually, for other noises that are out there. It doesn't help in those open spaces that the delegate alluded to, but it does help for the interior livability of the units.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I just clarify? So just from a quantification perspective, I was not suggesting that the buildings are not built to the standards, but what happens as we build more and we densify, the noise reverberates between the two. That's what it amounts to, Larry. Sorry.
Thanks, Richard. And I think there's a lot of interest in a number of things you talked about. I think we're going to move on. Any other questions for you? Hopefully you'll be around to answer. And Hayden, are you ready? Thank you.
Thank you all.
Morning from the bus company.
I will be, excuse me, I know we're a little behind time. I'll be relatively brief and try to stay on script on my notes. I'm going to cover off three areas briefly. Evergreen as it applies to the service changes for the bus company and some of the groundwork we're doing. A little update on C-Bus, and then another update on Handy Dart. December 19th are the service changes for the bus company in the Evergreen area. Yet Evergreen opened it on December 2nd. Why the gap in time? The schedule changes all take effect. A lot of programming 6 months before a schedule goes into effect. That was done 6 months ago. There's a lot to schedule changes, got to be inputted. We have to do the operator shifts, etc. The December 2nd opening, of course, came after that 6 month window. So our focus was to make sure that our customers were taken care of in the interim. We had buses on our regular routes passing the Evergreen stations. We've made temporary bus stops in there. We put temporary signage up. I checked with CI this morning. I checked with Angela Otto, who will be doing a presentation, and we're not getting any complaints from customers. So very pleased with that on the interim basis it worked. In preparation for December 19th and significant changes for our customers, we needed to train our bus operators. They needed to understand the changes to the system. So way back in the spring, in the bullpens, and the bullpen is the staff room for bus operators at Port Coquitlam, we held a number of briefing sessions with them on the changes, explaining to them what customers may ask for. That slide's actually my next point, and I'll come up to that. But and so we did a fairly significant debrief with them. We then met with the union leaders as well, did a 2-hour session with them. And then this month, just prior, in November, we, with CNBC and TL planning, we went back to the bullpen and gave everybody an update. Our training department produced manuals for the operators that they're carrying on the buses with them as to address customers' issues. So we put a real focus on the customer, and so far, so good. So I think we've covered it off. There's new route numbering going throughout the system. I believe you're going to get a presentation on that shortly. It was decided that we would introduce the route changes with the Evergreen opening. One of the changes are community shuttles. If you notice, the route numbers are C23. The letter is going to be dropped. It's just going to be 23. As Kevin mentioned, of the 29 routes in the northeast sector, only 7 remain unchanged for Evergreen, so that's fairly significant. If you look at the little card that we're distributing to everybody on Burke Mountain, since my arrival in 2011 and probably shortly thereafter, we heard a lot of concerns from the residents of Burke Mountain, the city of Coquitlam, about a lack of service in that area. Through the mayor's plan, and we're very happy to announce that we're going to be starting a new route, the 191. You can see the red line in the circle around Burke Mountain. It starts on December 19th. It connects Burke Mountain neighborhood with connecting Coquitlam Town Center, the Evergreen Extension at Lafarge Lake Douglas, and Coquitlam Central Stations. It's going to be a 30-minute service Monday to Friday from 5:30 a.m. to 10 p.m. and then shortened up a little bit for the weekend. It's been very well received by the residents and a real positive input going forward. On the ground, not so glamorous, of course, at the bus company with Evergreen opening up, but a lot of work. The sign shop for TransLink resides in the maintenance department of the bus company. A lot of work done in addition to the normal refurbishment of our signs. We built over 1,000 new ID signs for the Evergreen project. We had a lot of customer alert signage, over 1,300 that's been put throughout the system. And so far, as I said, we've had no complaints and it's been going well. On bus stops and the construction of bus stops, we've had some of the buses change from shuttles to conventionals and from conventionals to shuttles. That requires some changes to the bus stops and on the roadways. Wheelchair pads, for example, the shuttles, the wheelchair access is at the back of the bus. The conventionals at the front, so we've had to make some construction changes, but all going well on that. Over to C-Bus. I report on this every quarter. That's one of the old C-Bus, the Broad Beaver being retrofitted. It will be completed this year. We will get anywhere from a 5 to 8 year extension to its life. It'll go into service on January 1st. We will decommission the old ship, and it'll be up for procurement to try to sell or scrap or whatever we end up doing with that. It's on track. We should be able to get the regulatory approval with no problem. We're audited every year on our safety management system at CBus. We've just audited again for the second time, and pleased to say that there was no problem with that audit, and we were certified for another year. Construction going on at CBus, both at the administration buildings and the terminal ways. The construction is going well. It's on track. It should be completed by Q3 of 2018. Very few customer complaints from our CBus customers. The odd complaint here and there, we addressed them, but for the most part, it's gone very well. On Handy Dart, I can just say that we do appreciate all the input from the public delegations, from the advisory groups, from individual customers, and since the reorganization change and under the leadership of Louise, we are really laser focused on providing the best service we can with Handy Dart and to improve it. Continuous improvement would probably be an understatement of our focus that we have on Handy Dart. We want to lower the denials. We'd love to get down to 0, increase the number of trips. The quality of the trip, the safety of the trip, very important to us. The complaint process, very important. Louise spends a lot of time with her staff going through all the complaints. We take every one of them very seriously. We hold MBT accountable, the taxi companies accountable. We follow up with them all the time. I was asked at the last board meeting, what is the on-time performance for taxis? It's not a real science that we have, but we have a pretty good indication. It averages at 86%. With one of the companies, 99%. The lowest is another company at 71%. November Handy Dart overall on-time performance has increased to 90.16, 90%, which has been the highest of the year, so we're pleased with that. We have, and I just learned this when Louise gave me the bullet points, we have out-of-town Handy Dart customers, and they book Handy Dart when they arrive in town, and they had expressed a frustration that they call our regular booking number, they're calling long distance, and they're on hold for 30 minutes, and it costs them money. So Louise installed a toll-free number, puts them to the queue, and we've taken care of that, so pleased with that increase. Access Transit Customer Care Call Center has seen a steady increase of calls, and we've had a 1% increase in new registrations from 2015 to 2016, 5,500 in 2015 and 5,619 in 2016, so it's growing. Some factors for the increases could be the elimination of the Canadian Cancer Volunteer Driver Program. Handy Dart continues to see increased demand for services. By year end, we expect to provide, and this is last time we reported out with the additional funding, about 33,000 extra trips. Fuel costs are down. We've put that into more trips. I'm very pleased to say that we'll provide an additional 51,000 trips over our 2015 numbers. And in 2017, with the Mayor's plan, we'll increase by 45,000 service hours. That equates to an additional 85,500 trips over 2016. So we're increasing the number of trips. I'm very pleased with that. Louise shared an interesting stat with me, and I thought I'd share it with the board as we move forward. BC Stats, which is the Central Statistical Agency for the province of BC, is indicating that in Metro Vancouver, the number of people aged 70 or older will increase by 55% over the next 10 years. That's a significant number. And of course, the demand for Handy Dart will increase, and that's a good number for us as we look at Handy Dart and our vision going forward. And finally, to summarize, I asked Louise, give me a few bullet points that I can share on customer improvements, because we are looking at that. Every time I come here, we've made improvements, and I'm so pleased with the progress we're making. We're establishing so here's the bullet points. We're in the process of establishing a panel made up of customers to review and escalated unresolved Handy Dart customer complaints. Taxi drivers providing Handy Dart trips that result in a serious complaint are immediately removed from being able to provide any further Handy Dart trips. We're not going through an investigative process. We're just removing them, and then we'll investigate it just to make sure that it doesn't happen again. With a goal of low denials, Handy Dart was able to provide over 109,000 trips in November, up 5% over the forecasted amount of trips. NBT, Handy Dart contractor, has hired 21 new operators and added 5 runs, 2 in Vancouver, 2 in the West,
and one in North Vancouver. That's my report.
Thanks very much, Hayden. I'm gonna look over towards Barry's direction. I sort of cut you off last time, Barry, but we were a bit behind schedule, so Barry.
So I'm not sure Hayden can answer my Richard question. Registered users for HandyDart, how many do we have now?
Louise, are you?
21,000 registered users, and we're providing something in the order of 1 million trips a year. Is that correct? So, and when we say a trip is there, and then it's a separate trip back. Is that correct? So we're looking at our HandyDart users using approximately 50 trips a year, maybe. Does that sound about right? Is that correct?
I'd have to work that out.
It's a Richard question.
Thanks, Barry.
Thanks.
Thanks, Hayden. I think we should move on, and again, you know, we will have a chance to talk in the hallways and so on to Hayden if we need to. Doug? Right now, we're going to ask Doug Lepard to come up and give us the report from Transit Police. Welcome.
Oh, see, I saw someone reaching over here. Led me astray. Yes, that's it. Good morning, everyone. I know that we're behind schedule, so I'll try to be brief. You can just move to the next slide. So we are totally committed to the joint strategic objective with TransLink of having a safe and secure system. And so there are things that we do every day that we become very good at, but there are also high-risk, low-frequency events that you have to practice and train for. So one of the initiatives that we did this year is we contracted with the Vancouver Police Department's emergency response team and put on a 2-day training program for handling incidents on a train, in a station, and a bus. Great cooperation from the bus company and the train company in making a bus available to us. We had Inlet Station before it opened that we did training there, so there was a short classroom session and then mostly 2 days of scenarios, mostly on in Inlet Station. We had 131 of our members trained, and we also had Coquitlam RCMP and Port Moody Police with us as well, because we've been really focused on interoperability and training with the jurisdictional police. So that went very well, and of course training is perishable, so we're institutionalizing that training in our system. Next slide, please. So the Evergreen Extension, again on that line, you know, we have been working with Port Moody Police and Coquitlam RCMP for a while now. That's Chris Rattenbury, the Chief of Port Moody Police, and Sean Maloney, the officer in charge of the Coquitlam RCMP. So I have met with their executive and briefed them. I've met with the Port Moody Police Department Police Board to brief them about what they can expect. And we have worked out interoperability. We have protocols in place, an MOU in place that ensures that we're able to provide very collaborative, seamless policing across the system. In fact, the Coquitlam RCMP asked if they could do joint patrols with us around the system to orient themselves to the system. It is a fairly unique policing environment, and so that's great for us. We work with them. They get oriented to the system and where the issues are, and TransLink gets free policing on the system. So it's a great working relationship, and we've been really impressed with the level of engagement that we've had from them. Next slide, please. So this has been mentioned, the opening. We were very pleased to be a part of that. I understand that the Premier is in quite a hurry until she met 2 of our police dogs were there, a cruiser and Kona, and all of a sudden she had all kinds of time. But I do want to apologize that she had her compass card in her hand, and Kona was so interested in it that he chewed it up before giving it back. So I hope that that can be replaced without cost. Next slide, please. So we've talked about this before. Really great to work with TransLink on a marketing campaign about sex offending on transit. We also worked with Battered Women's Support Services and the Ending the Violence Association of BC both on the campaign, the content of it, and we recently did a joint press conference. It went very well. It was about a 45-minute press conference. Angela Marie McDougall, who you see there, and Tracy Porteous, to her right, both spoke very strongly in support of the Transit Police and TransLink for taking this issue seriously. Really focused on deterrence, but also in ensuring that women know that they can report these offenses, that they will be taken seriously and investigated thoroughly. Next slide, please. Lastly, I just want to tell you that I know that TransLink is a world-class system, gets visitors from around the world to look at the system. And in the Transit Police we do as well, and we've had delegations from Europe and Asia interested in how we police on the system. And so we decided that we wanted to hold a conference to share best practices. We already have some very prestigious speakers like the Chief Paul Crowther of the British Transport Police, the Chief of the Transit Division of the NYPD are going to be coming and speaking, and a number of others as well. So that's a time that we can share best practices and learn from each other, and you know, raise the profile of the importance of having safe and secure systems and effectively policing what we call policing a moving city. So I'll stop there because I know we're behind schedule, but I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Doug and Barry.
Mr. Chairman, not a question so much as a comment. I think it's important to remember that the creation of the Transit Police was based on the principle that the public's concern about safety on the system. And if you look at the results since, and I think this most recent initiative around women and the whole sexual issue are just another demonstration of the fact that the Transit Police, in fact, have increased the public's perception of safety on the system. And I'm pleased to see that you hold that in such high regard in terms of it being kind of a #1 priority. So again, I think it's important to understand the rationale for creation of the Transit Police, and in fact recognize that it has worked.
You know, I really appreciate that, and I do know from the customer satisfaction figures, you know, prior to the creation of the Transit Police in December of 2005, you know, the customer satisfaction around safety was in the 6 range, and now we're above 8, so we know we're not the only reason for that, that there is a continuum of services that are provided by TransLink and the Transit Police, but we know that we're an important part of it.
Thanks, Doug, and thanks for getting us back on time. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So we're going to move to the report of the Audit Committee, and Barry, we didn't talk about this in advance, but if you wouldn't mind with your report, would you then sort of chair through the process? You've got a couple of resolutions and Kathy's report and so on, so I'll turn it over to you, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. So quickly, the update. The Audit Committee has actually met several times in the last while, so just quickly. We reviewed the status of IT projects under Lloyd's direction. Just want to say that the vast majority of this year's projects are on track and on budget. We also looked at what's coming up in the coming year, as usual, a full plate of projects. So IT group and whole is in much better shape than it was a few years ago, and really we have been doing a much better job. We met with and received the report of our external auditor, KPMG, regarding the scope and focus of the 2016 fiscal year audit plan. We reviewed in detail the proposed 2017 operating and capital budgets, which you're going to hear about in a few minutes. We reviewed and concurred with a number of proposed changes to existing financial and accounting policies, which you're going to hear in a little bit. Reviewed and authorized the release of the Q3 2016 financial operating results. The organization is operating quite satisfactorily. Reviewed and approved the 2017 internal audit plan. Reviewed and approved for recommendation to the board a resolution to authorize TransLink to raise up to $150 million in the bond market. You've heard that already. And approved for recommendation to the board a number of minor changes to tariffs. So it's been a busy time for the audit committee, and we're pleased to have been able to operate and deal with those issues assigned to it by the board. So if that's okay, I'll just carry on. So up next then, Mr. Chairman, and Kathy, I think, is here and probably ready to roll, is the 2017 business plan operating and capital budgets. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to turn it over to Kathy to do that, and then we'll take the resolutions at the end of her presentation. So with her, of course, is Christine Daker.
Yeah, I was going to say, good morning, and I come as a package. I brought Christine Daker. Christine, as many of you already know her quite well, she's our VP of Finance, and I really have to commend her. She did the lion's share of the budget this year. So with that, if I might kick it off, I'm very pleased to present our 2017 operating and capital budget this year. Our budget is based on our newly approved 10-year investment plan. So what we do is we work with the 10-year investment plan, take a look at where the direction of the organization wants to go. And year one of the 10-year investment plan is actually our budget. So they align directly on that. Earlier this year, through the leadership of Kevin Desmond and the executive team, we did a strategic review. As many of you remember, last year we had 6 priorities. We refreshed those, took a look at that, and through Kevin's leadership, we refined it down to 3 priorities. They include improving the customer experience and the public support, ensuring that we keep all of our assets in a state of good repair and the safety, and lastly, mobilizing the mayor's vision as we move forward. That, along with our 10-year investment plan, becomes the framework for building our budgets. And that framework is sent out to the full organization. And the budget is built from the bottom up. Every department is accountable and responsible for building their budget. What happens then as it gets accumulated, sanitized and prioritized, and what you see in front of you today is the end result of that process. Our budget includes getting a jump start on the mayor's vision, and it includes increasing our service. That comes with a cost, so you'll see the expenditures are up $143 million, primarily driven by increased services. 372,000 hours that goes out on our system right away, and 44,000 hours for the handy door, or simply put 65,000 additional trips into our handy dart service this year. I just wanted to say that it's those years of savings and that cumulative reserve that allows us to put that service in right in year one, so we don't have to wait until we have enough revenue generated to put that in. But that also increases our risk on the budget, because we're asking our operating companies, especially in the bus, to extend the life of their buses 1 more year. And I know our bus company takes a look at their assets. They figure out how long is the best to utilize those assets. What we're asking them to do is to keep the maintenance on those buses for 1 more year, so we know costs are going to go up, and reflective on that in our budget. But we think it's important enough from an executive team to ensure that we get that service out. As well as we're making a very aggressive approach in mobilizing the mayor's vision. This allows us to further investment in the major road network and our bike paths, improve our Compass program and capital asset management program, which we've talked about many times, and increase the support for vision. Included in the budget is also our contractual agreements that we've just signed, so that, and CPI clauses, so that in itself is $38 million, and our debt servicing costs will go up with the increased capital by $38,000. On the other side, our revenue will go up $111 million. This is primarily driven by a modest fare increase. So we haven't had a fare increase since 2013 in the organization, and that'll go in on July. And those fare increases range between 5 cents to 10 cents per short term. So your tickets, and $1 to $2 on your monthly pass programs. So modest increase. A lot of it'll come from increased ridership, as you heard earlier today, for over 4% increase in ridership, as well as we believe as long as the fuel pricing where it is, you'll see increased vehicle kilometers traveled. So not increase in the taxation, but increase in the volume of usage, so we'll get that through the year, as well as the property taxes. This nets to a $300 million surplus at the end of 2017, and I just want to remind the board that $300 million surplus goes towards capital, so it's not going to go back into the operating. It is to pay down for future capital investments that has already been accounted for in the 10-year investment plan. Like all budgets, it has its risks, but we think it's very manageable. We think the budget that we're presenting in front of you today is an aggressive budget, but very doable budget in that. And we believe that the risks identified in the budget are managed through a combination of doing our quarterly reports. We look forward, we're forward looking, and we will manage them as we go through, either through a contingency or through the reserve or adjusting our service. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Christine, and I thank her again for all the great work her and her team did, and she can run in through more detailed slides. Thanks.
Thanks, Kathy. As Kathy mentioned, the three main priorities that the budget is based on, improving customer experience and public support, is about improving TransLink's reputation, increasing ridership, and developing our employees. Examples of some of the initiatives that we will be doing in 2017 is developing and implementing a comprehensive ridership growth strategy, completing the fare policy review, expanding mobility options to the region through rideshare, cycling, travel planning services, and a pilot program that Kevin mentioned on van pooling. Developing a comprehensive customer experience strategy, developing and implementing Transit Police's enhanced public safety and communication outreach activities. Ensuring state of good repair is all about proactively managing and maintaining all assets in a state of good repair to ensure safety, reliability, optimize life cycle costs, and enhancing the customer experience. Some of the major initiatives that are included are implementing an asset management system, developing and implementing an enterprise emergency response plan, implementing the remainder of the recommendations of the 2014 independent review of SkyTrain, replacing rail on Expo and Millennium lines, and modernizing systems and processes. And mobilizing the Mayor's vision is really delivering on the regional transportation priorities. We will implement the early rollout of the 10-year vision. We will initiate foundational work for the next phase of the Mayor's vision, and we will begin developing a mobility pricing plan. Next slide, please. In developing the budget, the key drivers, and Kathy actually mentioned some of them, so I won't go through them in detail, but the ridership is about just over a 3% growth, and that's due to the service expansion, including the Evergreen extension, and also employment and growth. Employment growth is a major factor in our ridership as well. The fare increase that's planned for July 2017. Our fuel tax revenue is based on our vehicles' kilometers traveled estimates. And our property tax will increase our usual 3% per the previous year's property tax revenues that we get, plus the increase from development and construction growth that was approved in the investment plan. Our labor costs are per the collective agreements, and we have contractual and CPI, and then of course the service increases that were included in the investment plan as well. So those are the real major drivers in developing the budget. Isn't it big? I wanted it to be. Each area. Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry, you can't really see this that well. Apologies for that. The details are in the package though. Our consolidated revenues is budgeted at $1.9 billion. Our taxation revenue of $833 million makes up 43% of that total revenue. And included in that is the fuel tax revenues of $385 million, property and replacement tax of $357 million, parking rights tax at 70 million, and our hydro levy at 21 million. Our transit revenue is 29% of the total revenue, coming in at 560 million. Our government transfers is 282 million, and this is the money that we receive from senior government contributions to the approved capital projects. Our gain on disposal of assets of 150 million, Golden Ears Bridge tolling is 56 million, and investment income of 38 million. And then closing off with amortization of our deferred concessionaires credit for the Canada line at 23 million. So that's where we get our 1.9 billion from. Keep doing that. Is that what I'm doing? Thanks, Lorraine. Our total expenses, as Kathy mentioned, is 1.6 billion. So that, I wanted to show you how that's kind of where we spend that as well. Our bus services takes 42% of that, and our rail services, including the West Coast Express, is 18%. Our amortization and interest costs combined is 24%. And our roads and bridges is 6%. And the roads and bridges also includes a higher contribution to the major road network as approved in our 10-year investment plan. Transit police makes up 2%, and our corporate one-time is 1%. And just a comment on the corporate one-time, a big portion of that is the contingency provision that we provide for as per our policy, and other initiatives that support the development of the mayor's vision as well as our priorities. Next slide. I won't go through this in much detail either. Kathy mentioned it, but shows 370,000 more service hours, 234,000 from the rail, 137 from the bus, and C-Bus will also be increasing frequency. Our Handy Dart budget includes an increase of over 65,000 trips, and our taxi supplement is maintaining our 2016 budget levels. On the investments in capital, the capital program includes expansion vehicles to move forward on phase 1 of the vision, work to advance the new rapid transit lines and other state of good repair and upgrade projects to improve resiliency and improve customer experience. Major sources of funding for the program comes from the Public Transit Infrastructure Fund and the Greater Vancouver Regional Fund, which is more well known as the gas tax funds. The new capital program for 2017 is 895 million. Adding this to the existing capital projects already underway totals $2 billion for our total capital program. Of this, we are forecasting to spend 690 million in 2017, of which 450 million will come from senior government funding. Just a few examples of the infrastructure projects that are included in here are the early works and procurement readiness for the Millennium Line Broadway extension, south of Fraser Rapid Transit, Expo Line station upgrades, Expo Line station escalators, the Burrard station upgrade, Phase 2 of Joyce Station upgrade, Canada Line station upgrades, and a number of bus exchange upgrades. And these are all very critical for us to expand our network. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard the presentation by both Kathy and Chris. Just a comment from the audit committee perspective, we did spend time looking at the assumptions underlying the budget because those are critical. We also discussed risk. So those two things in particular are from the broad perspective, important facets for us in considering and discussing with management the formulation and the presentation of the actual budget itself. As you might expect, we obviously rely on management to produce the actual numbers at the end of the day based on those two things in particular, plus of course the objectives for the coming year. So the audit committee is satisfied that it had an opportunity to review in detail, but I think this is important for other members of the board to ask any questions that they have with respect to the budget before we ask you to consider the motion. So, Murray.
Thanks, Barry. This may be some details here that I just had questions about. On page 23 of the document, page 68 of the agenda package, there's a table that shows West Coast Express service hours, and it appears that the service hours are going down. I was curious about that. What's the story behind that?
It's the train bus service that we had for West Coast Express that we're no longer going to be providing. That's going to be done through, or as it was, it's going to be done through our bus division now.
Okay, so that's decreasing in one area, increasing in another?
Yes.
Okay, so it's an offset.
Yeah, there is no decrease in actual
Right,
service hours.
okay. The, on page 82 of the agenda package, there's a reference to Evergreen Extension Integration, and I was just curious about what does that mean, in that it's just a newly opened line, that there's money being spent to further upgrade it. What does that represent? I think it's, if you look at the table, it's at the bottom of the page, page 37. Second last line on page 30.
That's just, so it's the project, but it's just monies that would be carried forward. It's already active and underway. So,
It's just part of completing the project?
yes, yes,
Okay,
yes.
I see.
Yes.
I was curious because
Yep.
having had it open, I
Yeah.
thought there was something that was
No,
deficient, but
no.
it isn't. It's just a matter of now completing the.
It's just the cash flow, so the 400 million is, yes.
The other further question, if I may, on I think this is still the same page 96 of the agenda package. You know what? That's going into the next report, so I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Lorraine.
Thank you, Kathy and Chris, for that. I wanted to go back to the risks associated and the 5 things that you highlighted for us about the gas tax funds. And so could you just talk a little bit more about how concerned you are about those risks? You said we would manage them, but are we concerned at all about not getting that money?
So
It's a big part of our budget.
So as a CFO, I'm always concerned
Right.
until the money's actually in the bank account. I'm something that I watch closely. So if I can take a look at the federal gas or the fuel revenue, how it goes today is it goes through a consumer taxation branch, and our wholesalers have up to 48 months to do any type of adjustments. So we don't actually get a clear window as to what that revenue is going to be or when there's going to be adjustments. So sometimes we're surprised on getting these negative adjustments that pertain to 4 years ago, and that absolutely impacts our cash flow. What we do to mitigate that is we also get a third party to monitor the level of volumes. So we actually know if we think if there's a discrepancy, and we tend to put that into an account that gets audited to make sure that we're not surprised by it in the long run. The other one that we look at is the new regional gas tax, as Chris indicated. That one isn't a risk about getting the funds, it's risk about the timing of getting the funds. So we go through Metro Vancouver and work collaboratively, bringing our business cases forward. They then approve them. Sometimes there's a misalignment on the timing of that, and therefore it impacts our ability to deliver those projects on time. The other one that we've identified is the new funding that the federal and the provincial government allotted to. That funding comes with huge risk around the timelines on that one. So that's one of the areas that we're going to have to monitor extremely close at. And in today's budget that we're presenting to you, that's why we're so aggressive to get those projects started so that we can meet those timelines. We do believe we have the practices in place with our capital committee to monitor it, but it is, if we're not able to deliver these projects on time, we risk the associated funding with it. And I think the last one is foreign exchange. We buy many of our products, so our service, generally speaking, is within Canada. All our revenue comes in on Canadian dollars. Most of our labor costs, I mean all of our labor costs, goes out in Canadian dollars, but many of our parts associated in our capital projects are exposed to different currencies. And as you saying, this year our dollar has taken a dramatic decline. And if you look at forecasts, they say there could be a chance of further decline. We use the bank assumptions on it, and we take the average. And even though we do have hedging policies in place, we have not exercised that option at this time. And it would be one of the things we'd look at in the future as we deliver those capital projects.
And then can you just speak about the elasticity issue that you're concerned about?
Yes, thank you, Lorraine. When we put our fare increase in through in 2012, I think we were somewhat surprised at how elastic the pricing was. And we had always in the past put new service out with new price increase, so it was more difficult for us to determine how much revenue was coming from because of the new service, or how much of it was coming from the new fare increase on it. When we put the fare increase in 2012, we actually saw for the first time ever our revenue decline and our ridership decline. As indicated, we're July, we're putting our first fare increase since we've seen that decline in 2012. We believe it's going to generate positive revenue because we have the new services to go in, but we just flag it as something that we're going to watch very closely. I think our mitigating strategy right now is that now for the first time ever we've got an insight with Compass and we can follow that data quite closely.
Okay, thank you.
Marcella.
Sorry, thanks. About the risk and the funding, the funding that comes in. So we're spending money, we have a plan to spend money, we're going to spend money. And if we do not get the funding from the two government levels, what happens? Do we stop spending, or do we try to fund it through loans? Or how are we going to, what's your plan for dealing with that?
So I don't think there's a risk about not getting the funding as far as making commitments. Where the funding comes with is strings, and the strings are attached to being able to meet those deadlines. And my concern is that we have a very aggressive plan, we've got tight timelines, and so we have to manage that very closely.
No,
given that there are tight timelines on it, I think our mitigating strategy is really monitoring our capital projects extremely tight. If it looks like they're going to fall behind, it's working with our funding partners and advising them, looking for extensions, as well as determining whether you turn some projects on or not.
Okay, so no, I understand that it's more a question of timing and strings versus whether it happens or not because it's been committed. But as I say, we're out there spending money now, and we're spending the money based on an assumption of this capital coming in. And so you're saying we're just going to continue to spend the money and somehow manage any gap that might arise if the funding is later than planned in the plan.
That's correct. I mean, the plan is that we have to get started. It's an aggressive plan. We need the internal controls, which I'm here to tell the board that we believe that we've tightened them up significantly and that we will monitor them closely. And manage our projects in accordance to the monitoring system that we have, and report back to the board on a regular basis. If we find we're misaligned, then it becomes a bigger conversation with the board as to how do we readjust our capital program without overcommitting.
Okay, and operating, it affects operating as well.
That's correct.
As we roll out new services. Okay.
Yeah, it would not affect year one, but it would affect future years, probably year 2, 3.
Okay.
Gregor?
Yeah, just a question on the assumptions related to ridership, and noting that ridership is now, we're seeing a 4% increase this year, with the Evergreen line opening at the end of the year, and it's plugged in at 3.1, and what the implications are if we see 4% or even greater.
So when we do our ridership models, we do it based on July. So we had actually already seen some of that increase in it. The real big pickup in ridership is happening on the second end of the year. So the factor of 3.5% will be based on our July numbers. So we've already absorbed some of that ridership. Where the impact is, good news is our revenue goes up. The challenge is for us on an operating side is managing the capacity and the pass ups. And I know over the years, especially in the bus company, taking a look at deploying the assets in a more efficient way. Now they've got new programs in, they monitor the routes on a monthly basis, so they can, they're much more nimble to be able to change the 40 footers and put them in where it's where their pass ups are, and maybe move community shuttles into areas that are less frequent.
Marcella, did you have another question?
Thanks, Pierre, I did. one was the ridership, so thank you. But the other one I had was, I know it's a budget, and so I know you wrap everything in there together. And I see that we have the capital separated for the new division, which is the 895 number, right? So on an ongoing basis at the board, are we going to be seeing a separation from, if I can call it business as usual, versus how we're actually implementing the mayor's vision? Or are we going to always see them sort of combined into one budget? And I understand why you have to do one budget, they're all the numbers you have to do, but is there any way we can monitor them separately, or will it just be the capital that we'll monitor separately?
I think it is our budget now, right? The mayor's vision is our budget, so we won't be splitting out, well, what if we didn't get that funding, what would we do? But we will be managing our PTIF capital, so we will be reporting that as a package. So even though it's in the capital slide, it was all mixed in, we'll give you all mixed in, but we will also be reporting back on that program as a package because of the risks that Kathy just mentioned.
Okay, anyone else? Just a couple of comments, just for clarification. The fairly large capital expenditures forecast in 2017, but our contribution to the Evergreen line is fully funded in 2016, right? So we're not, that's not included in those numbers, right? Right, okay. And finally, I'll just make an observation, because Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move the resolution in a second here on behalf of the Audit Committee. The Audit Committee was particularly pleased and commented to management on the thoroughness of the budget preparation materials and the comments and thoughtfulness that management put into it. So I just want to acknowledge that. And if that's appropriate, then, Mr. Chairman, I move the resolution that the Board of Directors approves the 2017 business plan, operating and capital budgets.
Okay, I'll take over here and then just ask for a seconder. And any further discussion or questions? If not, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you, Kathy. Now there's another resolution. Do I just carry on with that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To do with proposed changes to policy with respect to budget contingency and reserve policy. And Mr. Chairman, these are relatively straightforward. Frankly, these changes are designed to enhance the understanding and readership and clarity around the way we present information. The Audit Committee reviewed these matters and satisfied that they're appropriate and meet the objective that management outlined. And we're, on behalf of the Audit Committee, again, I'm prepared to make that resolution if that's appropriate.
Thank you, and is there a seconder for that? Seconded, any discussion on that? I've seen the material. Oh, Murray?
Yes, Mr. Chair, just wanted to clarify, so the objective in relation to changing the AFR, is that the correct terminology, is to protect, amongst other things, protect our credit rating in the market, is that right?
It does two things. Having the cumulative reserve funding allows us to handle the economic shocks. So if we were to see a dramatic decrease in the fuel revenue, as I indicated, or maybe our funding didn't come in as planned, it allows us to use that reserve to manage our services. And why we set that tone was twofold. One, so that when we put new services out for our customers, that they can count on us, and that we, over a long period of time, we're not going to put service on and take service out, that we could manage it over a 10-year period. And the second one is around our ratings with our credit agencies, and making sure that we have the appropriate reserve. So they take a look at what our policies are, what our reserve is, and they give us a range. This number here that we're talking about sits right smack dab in the middle of our AA credit rating.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. I think that's the end of the audit committee report, isn't it, Barry?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We also did, as I indicated earlier, reviewed the third quarter results, and they've been distributed to the board and released publicly, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Right. So, again, solid performance through the first 3 quarters of the year.
Thank you. And now, Brenda, over to you to
Thank you.
report on the risk committee.
Thank you. I have a short report from the Risk and Capital Committee, 4 items to highlight for the board. The first is that we had a presentation, as we do every quarter, on the recommendations from the 2014 SkyTrain Independent Review, which we colloquially call the McNeil Report. 20 recommendations were made and 10 have been completely implemented. We had a quick discussion with Richard a little earlier on auto restart, and that has been a big focus of the management team and the committee. And just to advise that in addition to the things that Richard reported, we also received a report on a number of software upgrades which will occur over the next several quarters, which will add to the work that's already been done in speeding up after a SkyTrain interruption. There is more material in your consent agenda, and I would encourage you to have a quick look at that. It's only a page or so, but it will give you a sense of some of the terrific and fairly innovative work that our team has been doing. The second thing is we had a capital program cash flow forecast discussion, and that's a fairly technical report. It kind of bridges between the year-to-date or the in-year capital, but also looks back to prior years, the current year, and to the future, so that you can see the whole capital flow of our capital projects. It's rather moot this year because the same thing basically happens in our 10-year investment plan, but in a way, Marcella, it speaks to some of the issues that you were raising a little earlier as well. The third thing to highlight is that we had a presentation on the capital allocation process, and we were walked through kind of the strategic level way that capital is reviewed by the management team and through which recommendations come forward to the board. And a piece of that work is where there are in-year modifications to the capital plan that's approved by the board, as we just did now, a clarification of the process for in-year reallocations, and that will come back to the committee and forward to the board at the next quarter. The final thing I wanted to mention is that we had a presentation on federal funding, the update for looking ahead for investment plans 2 and 3. And I won't belabor that now because Jeff will be here a little later, and if they're in the stakeholder presentation, and if there are any questions, they're probably best put to him. All of the other items are consent agenda items. They reflect reports on various capital projects underway, station upgrades, the Evergreen line that we just talked about. I commend them to you for reading. They're short and they're factual and give you a good sense of update on all of the various capital projects that are underway. They are consent agenda items, so if there were any questions, we'd have to vote to open those up. But in the absence of doing that, that concludes my report, and there are no decision items that require a vote, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Brenda. That was very concise. Looking for a better word than that, but thank you. Lorraine, over to you for the report from the Stakeholder Relations
All right.
and Service Committee.
Well, I don't know, unfortunately for time, we might not be as efficient as Brenda has just been. So we've met a few times as the Stakeholder Relations Committee, but we're going to have 3 presentations today in regards to some interesting topics. So I won't speak about those, but they are the Evergreen Line readiness and all the bus integration, the escalator and elevator improvement initiatives, and the 10-year vision. Now we've gotten through phase 1, now the work starts on phase 2. We also received reports on the transit fare policy review, the goods movement strategy, and more detailed work on the access transit review that's going on, and those are just kind of those projects are moving along, and more to follow for the new year. So at this point, I'd like to invite Richard and Zanny up, I believe, to do the escalator and elevator improvement initiatives.
Thanks. Thank you. I'll try to make up some time and just limit my comments to 5 minutes or so and then take questions. This is co-written by Vivian, Richard, and myself, and it's really about all looking after the customers in a system which is beginning to age towards 30 years plus. So the investment plan that has just been adopted includes several initiatives aimed at improving the reliability and availability of escalators and elevators, and we thought it's worth spending a few minutes. These are very visible elements of our system and really important for all passengers and especially customers with mobility challenges. And as we move through and build the system and ridership grows, we see more and more demand on these facilities. And it's something where we have been dealing with a lot of maintenance through Richard's team. We're now entering the stage of transitioning from not just maintenance, but also upgrades and investments. So we have you see outages on the system, and it's part of running a complex and large transit system. Outages are due to either planned maintenance activities that Richard's team undergoes. Many times, as assets age, we do have outages which are unplanned, and those typically are the most frustrating. We need to find out that the asset is down, send out a repair crew, and get it back working again. The fewer we have of those, the easier life is for our customers. We also have outages when we're doing upgrades to our stations. We're now experiencing significant outages at Metrotown, where we have the station under a significant upgrade, and our passengers are working through the lack of vertical mobility. There is a payoff at the end. In the meantime, we know that we are straining the customer experience. I looked up this statistic. We've had a tripling in the amount of ridership on SkyTrain since we opened in 1986. And good news or bad news, most of the stress is on the oldest part of our system. As we heard earlier today, Commercial Broadway, that part of the Expo line is 30 years old, and that is where most of our passengers are funneling through. So next slide, please. This shows you where our assets are spread. We have a lot of elevators and escalators on the oldest section of the Expo line. Elevators and escalators have a 20 to 25 year service life, and we're now in the 30-year plus range for most of our oldest escalators and elevators. As with any system, we have a range of age, and obviously Millennium Line is about halfway through the age, and then Canada Line and Evergreen Line are much newer. Another thing to notice here is the number of escalators per station is much higher for newer pieces of our line. as we plan and build extensions, we know what the ridership demand is, and we also have higher standards of accessibility. For example, all of the evergreen stations now have down escalators where we didn't have any in the original Expo line. It's sometimes useful to look at this visually. Top left corner is Metrotown in 1986, where the station is one of the highest and biggest buildings in the area. Top right is Metrotown this year. You can hardly see the station. It's hidden in a forest of development, which is exactly what we want in the region, but this also means the demand grows and those assets are used a lot. We have responded by prioritizing Metrotown as one of our upgrade stations. It's currently being tripled in size. And when the project is done, we will have 7 additional escalators and 2 additional elevators compared to where we were. In the meantime, it is a bit of a challenge now to navigate that station. Another interesting comparison is, as assets age, how do they perform? And we pulled some data that shows Canada Line, they're able to operate at better than 99% availability for escalators and elevators. Expo and Millennium Line, with much older assets, we're down in the high 80s and low 90s. We need to strive to get to that 99 plus for all our assets. That's what our customers expect. This does not come at a low price tag. Every unit is between $500,000 to $1.8 million, depending on the size and the location of the escalator and the elevator. Obviously, again, every time we replace one of these units, there is a disruption to our customers. So we're entering that phase where a significant reinvestment is now needed, with the implications both for budget and for disruption. How have we responded? Back when Build Canada Fund came around, we prioritized 7 stations. We've now finished 3 of them. The remaining 4 are underway. And those have allowed us to renew 14 escalators and 7 elevators at some of our oldest stations. So we leverage senior government funding under Build Canada Fund, and we are able to upgrade what we have at those stations. We're doing the same with PTIF. Most notably at Girard, there will be changes and upgrades to vertical circulation at Girard Station as part of PTIF. We're also doing what we need to do in terms of using state of good repair as one of our main priorities, and investing what we need to do to renew assets which are now end of life. So we now have a program, the Escalator Replacement Program, which is looking at all the 30-year plus assets and renewing them at a cost of around $47.5 million. This past year, working with Richard and Vivian and their team, we looked at how can we get this program delivered as quickly as possible. So we had an initial schedule which took us to about 2024. We pulled that back by 2 years. And because we bundled the delivery of the program into one larger package, we were able to achieve efficiencies in price per unit, working with our suppliers. So we had quite a good win-win in a program being delivered sooner and for a lower cost per unit. The cost of that for the customer is that we will likely have more stations under construction concurrently. So it's going to need some really careful management to work through that, make sure there are alternatives, and really excellent communication as we go through the construction. So at the end of the day, when we're done with the renewal, we can expect more vertical circulation at stations where we can add escalators and add elevators, such as what we're doing with Metrotown and Commercial Broadway. Where we're simply doing replacements, we can expect equipment that's more reliable and available more frequently. And when we do include or build modern equipment, Richard gets new tools to be able to have real-time monitoring of the condition of those assets. So our ability to respond and to know that an escalator is out and be able to send out the crews to repair it becomes much quicker and more efficient. So several benefits that we are looking forward to. In the meantime, we do have to expect now a period of reinvestment, and with the implications of that on disruptions at stations. Happy to take questions to clarify any points.
Tony.
Thanks, Andy. Just to get an indication, preventative maintenance versus repair. I know as assets age, obviously there's more repair as opposed to preventative maintenance. And if you speak to that, and then on the new equipment, is there a warranty period where the supplier is responsible for repair? And is all the repairs done in-house, or do we supplement it now that we're seeing an aging facility with with maybe the supplier providing some service?
Sure. I'll answer quickly and then turn it over to Richard. As part of our asset management program that we've been talking about, the Capital M program, we are ramping up significantly on preventive maintenance. We're beginning to track our assets, asset condition, asset age, and asset needs on an elevator by elevator basis, escalator by escalator basis, which now would allow Richard's team to predict when interventions are needed before the failure happens. So we're moving in that direction very, very quickly. Every new unit comes with warranty. Warranty is usually looked after by the supplier, and then they gradually hand over to Richard's team when the warranty expires.
Thank you, Barry.
You pointed out that the Canada Line, well, by the time we get the program completed in 2022, Canada Line elevators and escalators will be about halfway through their life. Does the Canada Line have a plan to, is it incorporated in their plan to upgrade or replace those as need be? Is that already in place?
Yes, Canada Line is a concession, as you know, and they have hand-back conditions. So when we get the line back after 30 years of the concession, the assets need to be in a state of good repair, so which means that Canada Line has to do the necessary maintenance, upgrades, replacements as need be to meet our conditions at hand-back.
And we monitor that?
We monitor that, yes.
Any other questions for either Richard or Sani? Thank you both, and thanks again for kind of abbreviating. It's a very important topic though, especially when you find an elevator or an escalator out. Thank you. Now, Kevin, the next item on the agenda is the Evergreen Readiness, and is Angela going to join you? So Angela will come up now.
Yeah, Angela's just, I think, really just going to run through some quick slides just to remind everybody what we're doing to get ready for the bus service changes in 2 weeks. I think it's just very important to remind the general public, it's a general matter that these complicated changes are happening in 11 days.
Thank you. And just before you start, Angela, just as a sort of a time check, what I'm going to ask Jeff to do on the next item, it's a topic that we've spent a lot of time on, the investment plan to date and the phase 2 going forward. We've sort of looked forward in past meetings on that, and so instead of having a report from Jeff, I'll ask you to think about whether there are any questions you'd like Jeff to come up and speak to. But over to you now, Angela.
Oh, great. Thank you. Can you put the first slide up, please? So, we're really excited about the third and final phase. We are going to be communicating that we have 22 bus routes that are going to be changing in the Tri-City areas. So this is going to be starting on December the 19th. Oh, sorry. Yep, my mic is on? Yes. A little closer? Okay. Gee, I've never had that problem of somebody telling me that I'm not speaking loud enough. So we have 22 bus routes that we need to communicate to the public. We've started this campaign November the 21st, and we're going to be extending through December the 22nd, and then picking it up again for the first 2 weeks of January to make sure that we have reached everybody. Next slide, please. We're really excited about having a new TransLink outreach bus that you'll see in the top left-hand corner. So this bus we've been using since the 21st of November, and we've been able to go out to the communities in Tri-City. We've already been to 18 community events, and we have another 18 events that are going to be taking us through January. We've already had about 30,000 people on board. We were there for the opening of the Evergreen Extension, and we've been handing out materials, information, maps, and we have interactive videos and iPads on board so people can actually do their trip planning. What you see up is the current campaign that we have introducing the changes. So we have a very comprehensive marketing campaign that includes the entire system, traditional newsprint for the communities and also for the commuter dailies, and a very aggressive digital campaign that is geo-targeted to people in the Tri-Cities area. The other thing that Hayden had mentioned earlier is all of the bus stop signage. We have placed information at 1,300 bus stops in the Tri-Cities area that is community specific and route specific for that area. We also have 6 rack cards that we've done, so they're promotional giveaways for customers that target the 6 areas that the bus route changes are in. And we are going to be doing another mail drop of 40,000 residents this coming Monday that will explain every single bus change and bus route, including the changes to the community shuttles. Next slide, please. The other information that we have obviously is at SkyTrain stations and bus exchanges, flagging for people just in case somehow they've missed on all of their bus stops that things are changing December 19th. The big message that we have is know before you go. And we have a dedicated TransLink service change page on our website. And I'll call to action on all of our marketing materials is to check out the website. And that includes, as part of our outreach, we have 120 staff who have been augmenting frontline staff, bus operators, SkyTrain attendants. So the staff outreach has been Coast Mountain Bus Company and TransLink exempt staff, 120 like I mentioned, and we're pushing this through to December the 22nd at major bus exchanges, SkyTrain exchanges, bus loops, and we're really excited about how that's been going. We have handed out to date 70,000 folded maps, and we have gone through all of the commemorative compass cards that were available at the Evergreen stations. So there was 50,000 cards that were available on opening day, and we have depleted all of them. So again, the final push for us is going to be know before you go and directing people to the TransLink website. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela. Any questions or comments for Angela or for Kevin? Well, thank you again, and thanks for kind of abbreviating that to keep us on time. Now, anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, and I mentioned that we would have an opportunity to talk to Jeff about the Phase 1 implementation and the Phase 2 introduction. But Jeff, I apologize, we won't hear a presentation, but if there are questions, now's the time. Well, we're pretty well versed on that, having spent so much time on it, so I'm not completely surprised that we don't. Jeff, you've done such a good job of educating us on that, so thank you. We're getting very close, and Lorraine, is there anything else in your report?
Well, we have the transit fare policy review update as a consent agenda. There's a report in the package, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any question or discussion on that? Okay. Thanks for your report, Lorraine. And Jim, we're over to you for the report from the Human Resources and Governance Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. From the Human Resources at the front of our committee, we had a labor relations update, talked about collective bargaining, including having a report on one bargaining issue that was concluded or with the union and one that's in progress. We also received the Vice President's of HR quarterly report and highlighted many issues, including organizational wellness, training, recruitment of frontline staff. And we also received an update from our CEO on executive recruitment. In terms of governance, we talked about the new director orientation program, and we reaffirmed that the agenda and the content is appropriate, and we'll continue again with our 3 new board members. We received a report on committee structure, and there's an opportunity to consolidate our committees and reduce our standing committees by 1, so that will be a discussion in our in-camera portion of today's meeting. We talked about subsidiary board appointments and made a recommendation to the whole board. Many of these subsidiary companies are there for legal purposes, but a couple that are important are the rail company and the bus company. And one of our 2017 New Year's resolutions is to improve the linkages from our board with these, especially the important subsidiary boards, the rail and bus companies. We discussed the management reports that we've been receiving in terms of format and length. And we also talked about the results from a board self-evaluation process. And this board decided not to engage an external consultant, but simply to use a self-administered survey that the board members completed. We have a report that summarizes the findings, and it's certainly a process that is important because we're always looking for continuous improvement. So it's nice to see that self-evaluation, and that will be something we'll work on additionally or discuss more later in the in-camera portion of today's meeting. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Jim. Is there any discussion, questions, etc. on Jim's report? There being none, we're getting very close to the point where we will adjourn this meeting. But before we do that, there's three things I want to say. Two of them have to do with directors who have served this board particularly well over the past number of years and whose terms are ending, coincidental with my term ending. Kevin kindly acknowledged that I will be going off the board at the end of this month, but so will Barry Forbes, who joined the board the same time I did 6 years ago, and Brenda Eaton, who joined 3 years ago. And I would like to acknowledge what both of them have done. They both chaired significant committees over the years. Barry and I worked for the first few years on the same committees and got to work hand in hand. Barry was vice chair in 2015 and succeeded as chair when Marcella stepped down for several months. And we have a lot to thank Barry for, but 6 years of solid service and friendship and support and encouragement and so on. And so thank you very much to you, Barry. And Brenda, in your case, you have served, as I said, on significant committees, but you and Barry both have not only taken the role as chairs of committees, but in addition to that, some of the work that has to be done kind of behind the scenes and overseeing some projects that management has been involved in has been a great boon to the full board, because you've been there doing a lot of work that if it weren't for both of you, the board would have been meeting more often and dealing with the tough subjects that you gave oversight to management on. And so thank you, Brenda. I'm going to miss being on this board, but I'm also going to miss Brenda and Barry, and I think all the rest of the directors will too. So I'd like to say thanks very much for what you've done. So I said there were three things, and that was two of them. The other one is I want to refer very quickly to Kevin's CEO report. And Kevin could speak about many of the highlights for 2016, but the one that he is too humble to mention is one of the most significant things that happened during 2016 is that Kevin joined us as CEO. And Kevin has a very good team around him, which is building and developing and gelling as time goes by. So I know Kevin wouldn't take the credit that he deserves individually for a number of the successes of 2016, but I can say on behalf of the board that we certainly recognize it, and we're so pleased that you're our new CEO. So that's it. That's it. And I don't think we need a motion to adjourn. If we do, we've got one. Okay, so we will adjourn and go to our workshop at 12:30, I think. Thank you. Thank you all to the public for being here today.